So business item A, receive, update, and discuss potential HEAP grant application, including potential homeless shelter locations. Mr. City Manager.
Given the challenge using this from that over there, I'm going to wander over here. And as I do that, I just would like to encourage everyone who drives a car or truck to be on the lookout for motorcycles. Hello. Is that better? Okay. So I'm going to stand here so that this thing works. I am Craig Allen, the city manager, and I have a probably 10 to 15 minute presentation on challenges and potential solutions to homelessness here in Seaside. The first two slides are from the 2017 Monterey County Homeless Census and Survey, and you can find this online as I did. Very simply, there's about 3,000 homeless people in Monterey County as of 2017, and that number has grown, it has almost doubled in the last 10 years, and 83% of those folks are Monterey County residents prior to being homeless. 25% of those folks work full-time. 3/4 of them live outside. There's a much greater depth of information about the homeless challenges that's available if you want to take a look at the Monterey County Census and Survey. We can spend just a minute on what HEAP is, because HEAP is in many ways has brought us here tonight. HEAP is the Homeless Emergency Aid Program. It is a funding mechanism of the state that is being provided to 11 cities and 43 continuums of care. Our local continuum of care is ultimately, it is overseen by the Coalition of Homeless Service Providers. We expect to receive about $10 million of HEAP funds here in Monterey County, and they can be used for services, rental assistance, or capital improvements, including shelters or ADUs and tiny homes. Homelessness is obviously a challenge and a problem here in Monterey County, and whenever you have a problem that somebody adds $10 million of potential solutions to, you're going to have some discussion. So this is the first discussion that the City Council has had on this topic, other than sending one letter, which I'll get to in a second. The $10 million is likely to be allocated like this: about $6.6 million in capital projects, $1 million for service, $1 million for rental assistance, and about $1.5 million for a variety of homeless programming. Again, these are the decisions on how this money gets allocated is not made by the Seaside City Council. It's made by others. But there's about $10 million available, and the application, if you want to access some of the $10 million, has to be made by April 1st. So it's new money that has come up fairly rapidly, and a lot of people who are interested in providing solutions to homelessness are seeking to access that funding. So far, there's really only been about 5 things that have happened as it relates to the city of Seaside and HEAP funding. I'm going to go through those fairly quickly to bring us all up to speed. You can go back, of course. There was a grand jury study about homelessness about a year or so ago. Obviously, homelessness started more than a year or so ago. But as the HEAP funding became available, county officials, first informally and then somewhat formally, offered the vacant modular building at 1292 Broadway. It's about 4,300 square feet, and they offered that as a potential homeless shelter or service center. The building, and this is important, is appropriately zoned for an emergency shelter. Under California law, cities have to have, and as part of their housing element, cities have to allow emergency shelters by right someplace. And that location, that geography, includes where the building is. They were very kind to invite some city officials, city staff members there, and as we were walking through, they showed us the building. It used to be a health clinic, and said, this is something that the city of Seaside or someone on behalf of the city of Seaside could use, but they were not offering any monetary assistance in retrofitting the building or operating any program. The county asked the city for a letter of interest, just to know whether or not the city had any interest whatsoever in that building. And on January 17th, the city council reviewed a draft letter, tweaked up the language a little bit. A copy of the letter is in back. We made 50 copies. If you want to, if you don't have a copy, you can have mine. And what it said, basically, is that the city council is willing to discuss the idea. They didn't make any commitment whatsoever. And what they said specifically in the letter is that any decision has to follow community input, which is one of the reasons why we're here tonight in a larger chambers than we have at City Hall. The letter specifically mentioned a meeting that happened on February 13th. I'm going to get to that in just a second, but after we publicized that we were going to have a town hall meeting, and the town hall meeting was sponsored by council members Pacheco and Wizard, 2 days prior to that, Community Human Services and Gathering for Women dropped off a letter at City Hall and met with me for about half an hour or so. And the idea that they presented is they would be the operator of a shelter at 1292 Broadway that was funded by HEAP. And again, the letter was on the table as you entered, if you want to take a look at that. The town hall meeting happened in this very room on February 13th, and I was sitting right there, and others were, Councilmember Wizard was here, and Councilmember Pacheco was sort of the MC of the evening, and there was about 100 people here that night. And I know 32 people spoke because I was taking notes. And this is my summation. 8 people clearly were in opposition to that specific idea of a shelter or a homeless shelter at that location. 8 people had questions about operations, and 16 people expressed support for either that specific idea or for helping the homeless situation in some manner. So that happened on February 13th, and at that meeting some people were a little worried that some decisions had been made, and I think everyone who had any connection to ultimately making a decision tried to assure people that no decisions had been made. And then February 15th, which is Monday, I'm guessing, I forget, Community Human Homeless Solutions came to my office, and by the way, I have an open door policy, so just walk right in, and they did. And they gave me a letter that I've communicated to the City Council, and again, the letter was placed on the table, and again, they have offered to operate a shelter at that location for women and children. So that's trying to get all of us in the room up to speed on the major moving parts as it relates to Seaside as fast as I could. And I certainly leaving out a little bit of detail, but I think we're all sort of on the same page now. Okay, so this is the discussion that we're about to have, that City Council is about to have. And I'm going to underscore, it's the first discussion that the City Council has had on this topic, other than sending that one letter where they edited out part of the sentence. And as the discussion happens, it's a very public process. I have tried to frame it as a series of questions, because as staff, we can only do on topics such as this what the council directs us to do. So I have no, the staff has no direction on this specific topic as we speak, which is one of the reasons how everyone can know that there's no done deal. It just hasn't been even discussed, much less done. So I'm going to come back to this. You don't have to memorize this slide. This is going to come back as the last slide when the discussion is underway. But I'm just going to frame it real simply from the start as, do we do something or do we not do something? Do we do something with partners or do we do it alone? I'll say that the City of Seaside does not operate homeless shelters. We don't have that skill set in our present staffing complement. Do we do a shelter or do we do something else? Do we do a shelter and something else? Do we just do the something else? And the something else can be safe parking, rental assistance, housing vouchers, tiny homes or ADUs, food and clothing. Cities customarily don't operate in the homeless sort of space. Nonprofits and counties typically undertake that responsibility. We are principally public safety, planning, maintenance. Not to say that we can't do things, but we typically do not as a city. Do we focus on HEAP? I mean, again, we have a problem. The state is about to deliver $10 million of funding for the problem to Monterey County. Do we as a city and as a community focus on that opportunity that's in front of us and has to be resolved by April 1st? Or do we focus beyond HEAP? Or do both? When you talk about homelessness, there's no one type of person who is homeless. Homelessness affects a very wide variety of people. So are we going to offer a full spectrum of services? Are we going to focus on subgroups? Children, women, families, veterans, elderly, short-term, long-term. There's a wide variety of efforts we could undertake or support. And there's a difference between undertaking them as the city itself or supporting them in some manner. Are we going to identify some funding source or a limit? The City of Seaside has budget challenges, as many cities do. And if we want to operate a shelter using city manager math at that location, that's can't be less than $300,000, and it might be $500,000 to $600,000 over the course of a year. We haven't budgeted that. If we absolutely had to do it, and the city council said go do that, could we? We'd figure out a way to make that happen, but it's not in our budget as we speak. Again, there's this idea of the county has offered this building for this use. We could accept that as a city. We could not accept it. We could try to block this from being used as a homeless shelter. I want to make 2 points on that. Again, this location is appropriately zoned for an emergency shelter. If somebody wanted to operate a shelter at this location, the city could not stop them from a zoning perspective. I've had conversations with my staff at the county, and they have made it clear that if the city does not want this building to be used for a homeless shelter, that carries a lot of weight with county officials. It's a temporary structure. It's possible that the building could be moved. We've done no architectural and engineering analysis of that, but is it possible? Anything's possible. Where would we move it to becomes the next question. So that's That's another question that can be discussed. We're near the end of the questions. Do we involve the homeless committee? The city of Seaside has created a homeless committee. And they're wonderful people who are volunteering their time to help on this issue. Or do we just have the council have discussion? Does the homeless committee and the council work together? Is there a task force created? Can we do all that by April 1st is its own question. We have two entities, two well-respected nonprofits who have stepped up to say the city doesn't have to operate a homeless shelter at that location. They will operate a homeless shelter at that location. There's obviously a good amount of discussion about how a shelter could operate, what are the optimal parameters for that. That discussion has not happened yet. So a question for the council will be, do we establish a process for selecting between the two of them? Do we put both of them in a room and say, work it out and come back? That hasn't happened yet. By the way, those are just the questions that staff has come up with. There are many, many other questions. And I want to make this clear. At some point, we're going to have another discussion about homelessness at the council level because the city's ordinance on sleeping in public is not enforceable as we speak. There's been some case law that says that just flat out saying you can't sleep in a public park is not constitutional. So we're going to have that conversation at some other point further down the road with the council about that ordinance. And we're almost done. Unless the council, after the discussion tonight, says we're not doing anything, there'll be follow-up discussions. The council tonight isn't going to, can't really, make a final decision certainly on a HEAP grant, because what would have to happen is somebody would have to craft up the grant application and have it come back before the council, and the council would then offer its support to that detailed application. That detailed application does not exist. We have 2 letters from reputable nonprofits, but that's all that we have. So there will be a follow-up discussion. Okay, that concludes the framing of the discussion that will likely occur. And staff's available to answer questions as we are able, and I expect the council will first talk amongst themselves, engage the public, and then come back. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager, for a nice presentation of framing some of the issues and some of the concerns that the council has. I'll go to the council, starting with Council Member Kaspersky. Are your thoughts or comments? And we'll probably go around a couple of times, so there's no need for anyone to think they have to get everything out right now.
All right, it's on. Long story short, I would say we have to do something. It's been a discussion this council has had a number of times. What do we do about homelessness? How do we use the money we've already allocated? And where's the housing going to come from? These are questions we've been asking ourselves for a long time. I am in favor of doing something. My issue is that shelter is like solving, it's like a Band-Aid essentially for what is the underlying problem of people don't have houses to live in. So yes, we need to do something to give people a temporary place to sleep, but I would love to have more discussion on more ways to provide housing for people that is long-term, that is a place that they can live in. and afford to live in. So I may just leave it at that. I'm happy with if we can build a shelter or use the existing shelter, as long as we've said we've taken the funding and we've created some benefit for a community that has needs. And I don't think that I am particularly in favor of one place versus another, but I think we should take advantage of money that's available as soon as possible. I'm going to leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Councilmember Wizard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to start with asking a couple of questions of staff. I don't know if you guys will have this information handy, but I received some questions via email that the city clerk was kind enough to share with everyone in the agenda packet about calls for service from our public safety partners about what we currently have a few places here in Seaside that meet the legal definition of being a shelter. One of them is formerly Shelter Outreach Plus, now Community Homeless Solutions. They operate some space here in Seaside. We have Salvation Army on Contra Costa. So I was wondering if maybe our police or fire chief or both would be able to offer, even just anecdotally, what kind of responses that we typically see to those shelter-type locations.
Thank you. That's a great question, Councilman Wizard. And between January 1st of 2018 and several days ago, so a little over a year, we've had a total of 5 calls to those locations, and 2 of those calls were fire calls, and the others were low-level, nothing violent, just sort of nuisance type calls. So we've had very little need to respond to those locations.
Just to follow up with you, Chief, would you say that those were more like crimes against people or more like quality of life issues?
Quality of life issues.
Thank you.
Good evening. I was also able to look at facilities that have higher than normal use and of our services. So I looked at a 5-year period, and the average for, I'm not going to name what the facilities are, but 4 facilities, but the average is about 15 calls per year. So for us, we run about 3,000 calls per year. That would be about 0.5%, and it would be minimal effect on our normal daily response.
And do you have the data, Chief, off the top of your head, whether it's more like public service calls, helping people who have fallen, or flooding, or if it were more like active fires and arson investigations? Like, can you describe at all what type of calls those are?
The majority, almost 95%, are EMS calls. I don't have it broken down whether it's just an assist or an actual transport. They all fall into the EMS category.
Great, thank you very much.
EMS? Emergency medical services or a medical call.
Councilman Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor. I too have just a couple of questions first, and would like to listen some more to the public and the rest of the council. One of the possibilities was involving the homeless committee, which I'm very glad we have in our as part of our city. Any idea how that would affect the timing of this process, specifically related to the grant? My question is, if we involve the homeless committee, how would it affect the timing of this process, especially as specifically as it relates to receiving the grants? Do they have time to have input before we do the grant application, or would it be down the line?
Well, it's possible to involve the homeless committee in review of the grant proposal. This is a very short timeline, so there will have to be multiple meetings. And one of the challenges is that if the council takes this on, there will likely have to be multiple meetings of the council on this topic as this moves forward in order to gain feedback. So using the homeless committee or creating a subcommittee of the council that works with the homeless committee might be the best solution.
Thank you. I believe you said there were something like 3,000 homeless in the county, and I'm sorry, I don't have all the numbers here. You know, the point in time survey was done in 2017. That's what this one's from. But I know there are hundreds of homeless, I'm sure, in the peninsula or in the area. Is the idea of using this, the modular buildings here, is there anybody who has an idea of how many clients it might serve?
Yes, there's a similar size structure, miscellaneous, that serves roughly 75 people.
Thank you. Okay, all right. I imagine it depends on what sorts of, if it's families or such. Okay, well, 75, that's a decent amount. We've also heard numbers as low as 40 or 45. Would this, if this were approved, or really if any homeless shelter were approved, but if the one on Broadway are approved, would it be considered a permanent shelter? I mean, permanent as in over, not for the clients, but for the over the life of the city, let's say, or
That's yet to be determined. If the city grants some sort of support for a shelter, it becomes a negotiation between the city and the provider as to what are the best parameters to fit Seaside's needs and respect the neighborhood boundary. It's a negotiation.
So if unforeseen problems develop during the course of this if the workplace there, the city could weigh in.
Sure. Just because something is allowed by right does not grant any operator the ability to maintain a nuisance. The city can always nuisance pay.
We can't hear you.
The city can nuisance abate uses.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Thank you very much. Just a point related to Mr. Campbell's question. I was told the facility will hold 25 to 35, so I think we all have different numbers. I was told related to Mr. Campbell's question that the space available was between 25 and 35. So I think we all have different numbers, so I just want to make that point clear. On another point, before my questions, is I just wanted to thank staff leadership, Ms. Dunn. There's approximately 140, 150 people here tonight based on the amount of chairs. There wouldn't be people to fit in City Hall, and it takes a lot of effort to change the venue from there to here to better hear the residents. So I also wanted to thank staff leadership and Ms. Leslie for doing the work that she did. Also, I wanted to point out the city of Seaside is definitely caring for homeless. 2 or 3 years ago, we did 6 homeless with the veterans. I just found out today at about 4:30. We donated $40,000 to the Salvation Army for their food trailer. They are using that food trailer. It's feeding about 100 people a day. Without that donation, the homeless wouldn't be fed. So Seaside definitely cares about making an impact with the trailer. I'm sure that's going to make a huge difference in the lives of people that need to eat. Going on to my questions, the $10 million awarded, 65%, as you mentioned, is for shelters. Salinas has a very strong proposal. Does it seem reasonable to you that the peninsula may get a maximum of $3 to $4 million for a project?
It's conceivable.
The shortage of staff, and city staff, the expertise needed and the resources needed, do you believe it is reasonable, practical, or have any common sense for the city to manage a program? Also, if we did manage from, are we responsible for the application?
As I mentioned, the city has no established experience in operating a homeless shelter. Nothing's impossible. You hired the wrong guy if you want me to say we can't do something. It would be much better, though, if the city council is interested in operating a shelter anywhere in Seaside, that we partner with a nonprofit that has an excellent record and a good record of experience in this service area. Otherwise, we will be learning as we go, and that will not be a good thing.
Thank you. I know the Veteran Transition Center has a really good proposal, and I believe the city of Marina, they didn't discuss it. I was going to ask you if you know the results of the city of Marina's proposal, because they have a great proposal, numerous beds, etc., and it'd be nice to know to their if their city has moved forward, but it seems like the nodding of the head that they haven't gone forward.
They met last night,
Yeah.
and I believe Councilmember Berkeley is here.
No, I'm talking to the city manager. Are you aware of any decision the city of Marina made?
Not yet.
I can,
Well,
public comment.
over 160 people attended Councilman Wizard and Murray Town Hall meeting. Do you know the numbers of supporters and non-supporters by Seaside residents?
I wasn't aware I'd be asked that question. I have the list of everyone who spoke. I did not. No, I don't know exactly. I have the list of everyone who spoke, and someone can figure that out. I didn't do that math.
When a homeowner adds a second story to their homes, or a significant tree is being taken down or wants to be taken down, it's a huge process for the city government to notify the residents and things of that nature. And I understand this is not mandatory because there's really no plans being brought forward, but they could be very much impacted by any decisions we made tonight. Did we notify that area and those businesses of this very important decision-making process?
Not directly, no.
I will make my comments related to the city manager's questions as we move forward. I guess this is normal protocol. Thank you.
To be clear, we didn't reach out to anyone surrounding that area because we haven't made any decisions about what should be surrounding that area. So I just want to be clear for the public, but that was a good question. Councilman Wizard wanted to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I wanted to identify that we used to have a shelter called the Welcome House here in Seaside, and it had 16 beds and 6 cribs. It was for either single women or women with children, and that has since moved to Marina. And we also used to have a place called Casa Max, which was for individuals or families with HIV or AIDS, and there were 5 beds. That facility has closed, and so I think it's important to read to you a portion of our current general plan. It's from the housing element, it's policy 3.3, and it reads, the City of Seaside shall encourage the provision of housing and services for homeless individuals and families for the use of state and federal programs and through public-private partnerships and local collaborative efforts. So as I understand it, we've lost shelter capacity in our community, but the legal document that guides what we do in our city says that we shall provide services and housing for homeless individuals. So if we're to follow our own rubric for what we're telling the community that we promise to do as the guiding document, the guiding principles of our own city, it seems like we need to be having a conversation about what we can do and instead of what we shouldn't do. So I'm interested in hearing more conversation amongst the council as well as the public's input on how we can do this thing that we've promised to do as a community in providing shelter services and increasing the programs available, and not hear about what we shouldn't do or what we're too afraid to do.
Anybody else? Okay. I'll take a few minutes to give my thoughts, and then we'll go out to the public, because I really want to hear what the public says about it, pro and con. But what I want to do is ask you to expand your mind a little bit, because somehow this thing it dove down into just one homeless shelter on Broadway. And I'm saying as a community, I don't want you to be hoodwinked about either as one homeless emergency shelter on Broadway or nothing at all. That's not the HEAP funding. Monterey County got $10 million to do services for homeless individuals and families. With that, it's divided up in several different areas, and the city manager mentioned some of the areas already. Which one was services, 10%, $1.2 million, rental assistance and subsidies, 10%, $1.2 million, capital improvement, 65%, $8.1 million, and that is where money to improve that modular will come from, or money to build an independent structure somewhere else would come from. So I'm just adding to the conversation. Then homeless youth set aside. That's another category, 10%, $1.2 million. Then they have another category, which is category 3, homeless youth, and that's a minimum of 5%, which is a little bit over $600,000. The city of Seaside can partner or go alone and put in an application in all of those categories and try to get all $10 million in Seaside. Now, I know that's not going to happen, but what I'm trying to get you to understand is we can't leave here with just saying, we just came here to say no to a homeless shelter on Broadway, and we leave that we leave $10 million on the table. That money is either going to go to Salinas or it's going to go to some other community that says they want to do some programs. And I'm saying I would love to do these type of programs in Seaside. That's what the money is for. The money is supposed to be used for emergency assistance to alleviate homelessness. But that doesn't mean only for a shelter. A shelter is just one category of 4. So I would like people to come up here and tell us what you don't want us to do, but by all means, we're looking for what we can do, because I know I want to do some of these things. We have youth in this community that need shelter, but it's also money for youth that are at risk of being homeless. Does that make sense? So it's not just homeless, it's at risk. So if we don't ask the council to take out an application for that money, where does that $600,000 go? It'll go 2 doors over, it'll go another city over, and our young people are, and when they talk about youth, they're talking about unaccompanied youth 18 to 24. And they're talking about women and children 24 and down. So we're not talking about kids, we're talking about people that just graduated and are struggling in college and need something. We should go for that money too. When they talk about rental assistance, I ran on housing affordability, and one thing I consistently heard is how the rents, particularly mobile home parks, are just raising rents up too much, and it's not sustainable. They have $1.2 million that we can ask for rental assistance. It's already nonprofits out there that focus on that. We can help them go for some of that money. We can partner with them for some of that money, and some of that money can help our residents stay in their mobile homes or house as long as the money is there. And so that's what I want to expand on. Let me just, when you read our ordinance, that ordinance that was passed, and there was a question about how many people could fit in that emergency shelter, our ordinance says up to 50 people. So it's not 75, it's up to 50. That's what our ordinance says. And that's that emergency shelter that people are talking about on Broadway. I'll just end with this two comments, I guess. Underneath services, they would approve an application for health and safety education. Now, is that for homeless or non-homeless? Services for street outreach. Services for criminal justice diversion programs. Now, when I think about it, and some of those are at-risk youth, that means we could supplement what we're doing with our SROs and make sure we're diverting our kids from that prison pipeline if they're messing around in school. So that's just one area. You have prevention and navigational services, and that's a pot of money where you go out and you talk to the homeless people and you tell them you have a service here, you have a service there, you have a service here. That's out there. My point is, if we don't ask for that money and we don't get that money, we have to ask a nonprofit to come to our streets and help us do something with the people that are living in our streets, living in our parks, living in some of these low-lying areas. Rental assistance, housing vouchers, rapid rehousing program, also eviction prevention strategies. Eviction prevention strategies. That means you're still in a home. So it's not just homelessness, right? And then the last area is capital improvement. And one area is that emergency shelter. That's what you guys are talking about on Broadway. Just one thing. Underneath, and that's the account with $8 million in it. Transitional housing. We have excellent programs, and I think Councilman Wizard just mentioned some of those programs we have in Seaside. How are we helping them to go grab some of that $8 million? Okay. Drop-in center. Drop-in center could be for adults, or drop-in centers can be for our youth, those at-risk youth. We already have a Seaside Youth Resource Center, and they were focused on youth violence prevention, and that's still there. But luckily, we don't have a lot of violence. You know, kids are fighting, kids are getting chased. I know we had a gun issue a couple of days ago. But my point is, we already have infrastructure for that. We can get some of that money and supplement what we're doing at the Resource Center. The city manager mentioned small and tiny homes. People are already talking about that. Do we go for money for that as a demonstration project? Is that on the form of Fort Ord, or do we buy a piece of land and put some homes there? And then last but not least, you can also get money for hand washing stations. In some cities, they said you have hand washing stations, public toilets, and shower facilities. Well, what about those people that don't want to leave the bushes, that don't want to leave the gully, don't want to leave the park? Can we supplement by having a hand washing station or a porta potty somewhere near there? I'm just getting you, expanding your mind, because a lot of you have now went to these public discussions. I wasn't there, I wasn't invited to be there. I went online and I read the meeting minutes. I went to the sites and I downloaded the application. And so I'm up to speed on all the things we can do. I just don't want us to get bogged down in Seaside and say it's just homeless shelter for adult men on Broadway or nothing at all, and we're not doing anything. There's a lot of things we can do. And the last but not least is, people, when you read the meeting minutes, and people were voting in these different areas, and they kept track of what people wanted and how they voted. You know, you go to little areas and you put your little dots on these, what you want, what you don't want. It ended up being that one of the meetings, the main meetings, street outreach received 12 points for on the Peninsula and Salinas. Street outreach received 12 points, 12 little dots. Emergency shelters received 16 dots. Well, you can say, well, more people want emergency shelters on the Peninsula, right? We're not necessarily saying Seaside, but on the Peninsula. Client services received 22 dots. They received more dots than a shelter. So if we're going to count how many people spoke up for different things, I'll count the numbers that they had at this meeting. And last but not least, programs for homeless youth, 18 to 24, or at-risk youth, they received 18 dots, 2 more than the shelter did. Rental assistance received 15 dots, 1 less than the shelter. So the people that attended the meetings did not force or did not say we had to have a shelter here. And of course they can't say we have a shelter here, but when you talk about the conversations at the meetings, I wanted everybody to know that it wasn't just a shelter on the Peninsula. Then the last thing is, it should be some type of emergency shelter on the Peninsula. That's where the conversation comes from. But no one says it has to be in Seaside. It's a regional peninsula emergency shelter. If it was somewhere else, then we would have to chip in. If it's here, we would ask other people to chip in. But it doesn't have to be here. But Seaside does have to do something. And it could be the shelter, and it could be all the other things I mentioned. So I just wanted to expand the conversation to allow the public to have more of a background knowledge. And again, you can give us the pros and cons of the concepts that you may want. All right, we'll take it out to public comment.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yes.
Would you prefer a question of a public agency before or after public comment?
I'm sorry, we want the public agency first. Okay, I got you. Thank you, sir. Yeah, perfect. Is there someone from the county, and is there anybody from the public agency nonprofit that wanted to do the shelter on Broadway? I want you to come up and make a little short presentation so the community can focus their questions. It'll be hard to go afterwards. So we have the Nick Chulis representing the Monterey County Deputy Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Yes, I'd be glad to answer any questions if you like.
If you could just speak in the mic a little clearer.
Yes, I'd be glad to answer any questions you like.
Councilman Wizard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here tonight, Mr. Chulos. I see that part of our conversation that was part of the city manager's presentation identifies or acknowledges rather that it is a modular building and then by nature it can be moved. I was curious to know, not being part of the staff level conversations that are sort of that gird this public conversation. Has that ever been part of the conversation? And to your knowledge, is it possible that we could move this building? Would it stand up architecturally, or would it fail? Just if you could talk a little bit about that,
Sure.
so that the public can focus their questions and know kind of where that fits into the conversation.
Yes, I'd be glad to, Councilmember Wizard. There has been no staff level discussion about moving that building to another site. I'm not a structural engineer. I don't know how feasible it would be to move that, but that's never been part of the discussion.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
So thank you for your answer. So if I understand correctly, and please, Mr. City Attorney, if I don't understand it correctly, I appreciate the clarification. If it's a county building, if it moves to a site that is not owned or controlled by the county, Does that, in your opinion, make it more difficult or less difficult to use it at all?
Well, is that a question for the attorney?
First of all, it would have to be zoned for the particular use, so I would question where you would locate it. And could it be used if it was zoned properly? Yes, it could be.
Thank you. And so I appreciate that you can't speak on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, but certainly at the executive level of the county government, could you identify a situation where we currently have a county facility that is being leased to a city or a nonprofit that's not on county land, and some sort of JPA or MOU where the county has an ownership interest, but the city or a private party or a nonprofit is the one actually controlling it?
I'm sure something like that exists. I couldn't tell you off that as we stand here tonight. I'd have to look into that, but
Does that sound like a normal thing that happens, or would that be kind of a
I would think it
one-time?
would be a little less than ordinary for that to happen.
Great, thank you.
And if I could, while I'm here at the microphone, Mayor and council members, just to clarify, the question came up earlier about what the potential capacity could be of the modular. Just by comparison, the temporary warming shelter that the county currently operates under contract with a service provider in downtown Salinas is about 10,000 square feet. And that houses, I believe, roughly 70 to 75 people. So the building at 1292 Broadway being 4,300 square feet, I mean, just mathematically, it would be somewhere in the 35 to 40 person capacity. And it would really depend on who the clientele was at that, whether it was families, single women, et cetera. So, and I'd be glad to answer any other questions you might have as the evening progresses. So, thank you.
Mr. Chulis, I have a question for you, and then we'll go to public comment. I'm trying to get an understanding of, and I think the city manager mentioned that you don't believe, I know you can't speak for the board, but there's no support for the county to allow that building to be used for emergency shelter if the council was not in support of that. Is that a fair?
I'm really not in a position to speak for the board tonight on that particular question. I can tell you that our board is, number one, very concerned about the homeless issue. We're working hard with the city of Salinas on a shelter. We agree with some comments that were made earlier that somewhere on the peninsula, probably more than at one location, there really needs to be homeless shelters. Our board, at a conceptual level, is very interested to know what the city's reaction would be to placing a homeless shelter at that location. But really, beyond that, I have no further direction from our board. They obviously know we've been engaged with the city. They know we're participating in the meetings, and I think they're very interested to know how the council would like to proceed on this. So.
Let me ask you one more.
Sure.
Do you think that the board would be in support of a nonprofit anywhere in the county using a piece of county property, county land, for emergency shelter or transitional shelter?
Yes, I think that practically speaking, the way that a shelter would be operated would be some type of nonprofit provider that would operate the shelter. The county per se would not be operating the shelter.
Right.
We'd be using a contracted provider, just as we do in the temporary warming shelter in downtown Salinas.
So is there any other communities that you guys are offering up any unused or underutilized county property that a nonprofit can just...
Not at this point in time, because frankly, this was a piece of property that we became aware of. I think the city manager mentioned that we had some staff level discussions about, here's a piece of property that could be used, it's zoned in the right zone. Is there interest in proceeding? That was really the beginning of the discussion. We're going to be looking at other possibilities throughout the peninsula because we think that, as one of you said, this isn't the only place that shelters should be located. Perhaps one in Seaside, one in another community. There's certainly the need.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure, you're welcome.
I look at the public comment and I see, I don't know, close to 20 people. So I wonder, should I limit you to 2 minutes apiece? Do you think you can say what you have to say in 2 minutes? I believe. Well, the residents should stand up in line, and everybody that wants to speak should get in line, but the problem is, if we do 3 minutes, then it'll be 10 o'clock before it even comes back to the council for us to really tell you what I think it is. And we have a lot more to do, so public comment is open. Public, I know, everybody gets to speak. This is a public meeting. Everybody gets to speak. You got 3 minutes.
Good evening, Council. My name is Lisa Berkeley, and I'm a City of Marina Council member. So I'd like to address some of the questions that were brought up by Councilmember Pacheco. So first, as you may know, Marina has always taken a pretty strong stance about helping the homeless. We currently have 10 locations where we work with homeless people, including one safe parking program, as well as a location that is undisclosed in order to protect victims of domestic violence. Last night, we, as a city, held through council, we had a discussion regarding homelessness and the HEAP funds. And we heard from a few potential HEAP applicants, including the BTC, which, by the way, was really an excellent proposal. However, we did come into a number of obstacles that come up with that particular proposal. Actually, from the other proposals that were presented, or some of them, it was the same obstacles. And this primarily this primarily is connected to issues of previously land which has been previously allocated, because sometimes people have said, oh, there's so much open land in Marina from former Fort Ord. In fact, as most of you probably know, that land has already been allocated. But in addition to that, there were issues around water and land use allocations, water, timing, as far as being able to complete the applications in time, and the biggest one of all was really the zoning issues. So there were no actual decisions that were made, but given what we heard, it seems there would be some serious issues with the applications. So if I can answer other questions.
No, I open it up for public comment, but we'll, maybe towards the end, if it comes back to council, I'll allow council to bring you back up.
Hi, thank you. I'm Kate Daniels, Interim Executive Director of Gathering for Women, and I came up because I believe you'd asked the folks that submitted the proposal to make some comments. Robin McRae is here as well from Community Human Services. And the comments that I really feel compelled, first of all, thank you for allowing this to be on your agenda and bringing this up, because what we have right now is a really unfortunate timeline. We have a window that's very narrow, and in order to successfully get this type of funding, a proposal that is viable, a proposal that is backed by a successful pathway, is what will achieve the right result. And so we submitted this proposal through a letter to your city council and to your city last week, because we have a recipe for success. We have a viable location, and we have a location that's in the right zoning, and we have the opportunity for funding, and we have 2 organizations that have been very successful providing services. And so what I want to be sure to articulate tonight is there's a lot of fear that I've heard surrounding an emergency shelter and what that would bring to a community and the downsides of an emergency shelter. What we provide at Gathering for Women are services. We provide a pathway out of homelessness. So what we are proposing at this location is going to be the opportunity for folks to get the resources they need to exit homelessness. It is a pathway out of homelessness. And so Robin will be able to share more about the details, but what I know from my experience at Gathering for Women is that this is a place where weekly meals are fed, where client services are provided, casework is provided, health care is provided, job training is provided. Just this week, for some schools on the peninsula, it was February break. And what that means for a lot of fortunate families is it means that trips were planned and students went out of town with their families. For Gathering for Women, what it meant was children came with their mothers to get a hot meal and you know, maybe to engage in some artwork and some activities that are provided at the space. So I only see the positive. I don't see a negative to this. It's a service that's needed. You have an opportunity because you have two organizations that have had success providing these services. You have a location that's available, and we have the opportunity for funding. So together, our organizations, I think, will put together a winning proposal.
Thank you.
Hi. As Kate said, my name is Robin McCray, and I'm the CEO of Community Human Services. We have over 50 years of experience providing a variety of social services in residential and housing settings on the throughout Monterey County, including on the Monterey Peninsula at our Runaway and Homeless Youth Program, which includes transitional supportive housing and a shelter, street outreach, and a day center. There's something that I haven't heard tonight that I would like to clarify. Our proposal brings a couple of unique strengths with it. For one thing, we're eligible as nonprofits to apply for the HEAP money. So our proposal is that we would apply for the money. We would enter into a lease with the county, provided the city was welcoming of a shelter at that location. We would operate the shelter and provide an entire array of supportive services, giving people a pathway out of homelessness. So the private money is terrific. It's something that we bring to the table that I haven't heard anyone else talk about. We also have a plan for sustainability that involves our Joint Powers Agency. Our JPIA was created, and Seaside is a member along with every other city on the peninsula. And this is exactly the kind of thing that a JPIA is created for. It's to do collectively what any municipality cannot do individually, and it defines the scope of services. And our scope includes mental health, substance abuse, and homelessness. So that creates a structure that could facilitate ongoing sustainability. The JPA could serve to collect monies from perhaps the county, the city, the peninsula cities, and the private philanthropic world, maybe a third each. That's the idea. And I also have to say that Gathering for Women and CHS have a tremendous track record for raising private dollars, and I think that that needs to be considered. So I would just say one more thing. CHS has various programs already located in the city of Salinas. We operate Genesis House, which has been good neighbors and has had few, if any, incidents in the 40-plus years that we've operated on Sonoma Avenue. And we have a family resource center that is kitty corner to the proposed site for the shelter that offers outpatient mental health services, domestic violence services, parenting education, a foster care support program, and a variety of other family safety net services, which all would complement the clients or guests who are at the shelter and the day center. So thank you very much for listening, and you have a tremendous challenge here, so we'll support you in any way we can, no matter what you decide.
Ray Bonilla, Executive Director of Community Homeless Solutions. I'm also in favor of doing something. We have 175 shelter beds through Monterey County and San Benito County. We are the operators of the Salinas Warming Shelter. We've been operating that shelter now for 6 years, going in our 7th year. There's many technical areas that you have to consider, whether it's done in Seaside or somewhere in the Monterey Peninsula. We're not in this for the money. Our mission is to make those that we serve, individuals and families, a better tomorrow. So we are here because, yes, we are interested in the solutions to the homeless issues in all of Monterey County and to help survivors of domestic violence. I'd like to stress that currently our operation budget for the Salinas warming shelter is about $65,000 to $70,000 per month. That includes food, 24-hour security, shelter manager, shelter coordinator, and an HMIS administrator where you have to input the information if you're going to receive HEAP funds, and also those that provide the supervision of the families and individuals in the shelter. So it's roughly, if you calculate it in the years, about $800,000. Again, we would like to invite the mayor and the city council, city manager. We've met with twice, talking about tiny homes. We're also proposing, and Eric can talk about that, our vice president of our board, about tiny homes. So we're not only looking at shelters, but we're also looking at other solutions. Currently, we provide also 129 transitional beds. It's an 18 to 24 month program. So that program really focuses on the next phase, which is permanent housing. Currently, we had a meeting where we're also trying to convert some of our property to permanent supportive housing for the homeless. So we're looking at, we understand that shelter is a short-term solution, transition a little bit longer, and permanency, a permanent solution. So we are also interested in partnering with the city, with other members and other community members and homeless providers in the Monterey Peninsula. So we're also interested in submitting our application. We have the experience, we've been doing it. And I'd like also to stress, 107 calls to Salinas Dispatch, 85 of those were medical emergencies. As the officer said today, a couple of our calls were in our respite care program, which is a shelter in Seaside. A couple of those were also medical emergency calls. So security, 24 hours, address the issue of
thank you so much.
The local businesses in Salinas.
Thank you. Just take a couple minutes. Eric Johnson. I've been on the board with Community Homeless Solutions for about 10 years now. And the organization's been in operation since 1978. It actually started in Seaside with a couple of churches, outreach to the street, to the homeless here. So long good history. And I just want to say I really appreciate Robin and the Gathering for the Women. All the agencies will work together and do work together. Several women from Gathering, for women come and stay in our transitional housing, and we all work together to get people on their feet. That's the key point with the organizations. But it's not an either or, it's an and plus. And I think the key thing is the location, is the fear factors, what's going to happen there, and how do you make sure that what you don't expect to happen, bad things will happen. We suggested in the letter we submitted to the council that actually there's some very proactive steps to approaching this, and one of those is starting with women and children only and not putting men in the shelter to start. The IHOL program that operates for men as well as Salvation Armies and the other programs to accommodate most of the men at this point in time. We think that's a great way to enter into and initially start with a shelter, make that successful, take your community action group you already have in the homeless, expand it so that becomes an accountability group as well. And that is provide feedback as well to the city, to the citizens, to everyone else about what's going well and what's operating and what's not and what needs to change. We also looked at very closely at working with other local agencies and the wraparound services. We don't do everything no single agency does. And so it's a community effort, it's not a single agency. But we do operate and do very well with shelters. We operate the San Benito shelter as well for Hollister, and that's about 50 to 70 people a night. And that's a year-round program. They're looking to us also to provide some tiny home housing, some transitional housing, and some street outreach as well. And that's been a very good relationship. So, the only other thing I will mention is the tiny home is something we continue to talk about. I know water is an issue, and it always will be with tiny homes. We have a great relationship with the prisons where we can actually build tiny homes in the prison at cost. And we can build them very quickly, both Soledad and Folsom. So if we have land to put them on, it's a great transitional housing solution. It works well in terms of continuing with the whole solution around sheltered housing. We are also very successful with funding and engaging communities across the board. And we have probably 4 or 5 different prongs of funding that we rely on for about a $2.5 million budget for community solutions. So happy to answer any other questions that come up on operations, but most importantly, partner with the city in helping address our citizens and support our citizens that are homeless sometimes or on the streets. Thanks very much.
Good evening, Anne-Marie Devon, 50-plus year resident of Seaside. I wish all of the council members, I know the mayor said that he read the minutes to that meeting that was held a week ago. The city manager's numbers are incorrect. I believe there were more than 32 speakers. I believe there were more than 8 that were opposing the shelter on Broadway, because that seemed to be the main focus that everybody spoke about. Nobody told us that night that the monies that we could get, if we're chosen to get those, could be used for other services. I learned a lot tonight. I feel if the city decides to go with something, we're not afraid or we're not against the homeless. I feel sorry for them every day. However, for us to get that money and not have a plan of what we're going to do with it, I think we should join with an organization or organizations that have a track record of success. I believe somebody said earlier, we've never done this. So to us to just go start it, that's going to lead to potential failure. Nobody's against the homeless. We're against the location. And what I did learn tonight too, there's a lot of conversations that have been happening that we were not aware of. Conversations with the city manager. Conversations possibly with the city council. We have not been aware of that. And for that night, for those numbers that the city manager said, 32 speakers, 8 were approvals, 8 were opposing, and 16 were questioning. I think somebody needs to look at that tape again, because you will find that those numbers have changed. But the ones who were in agreement with this proposal, they weren't even Seaside residents, the majority of them. We got to speak. Those speakers that night, a lot of them were agencies that shared interest in this building. There were people that were from other cities. And there was a young lady, probably 8 or 9 years old, who even said, have you even asked the homeless if they even want this? I know Gathering for Women is a great organization, but how many of those are actually Seaside women? A lot of them are from the other cities. So I think we should join with the other cities to get them involved as well.
If I have to stand up, it's not out of disrespect, it's out of back.
My name is Robert Blomness. I'm a Seaside resident. Nice to see you here, and I'm glad this topic is coming up for discussion. I wasn't here at the last meeting. I'm sorry, I was otherwise busy with something. Can't actually even remember what. Yes, I'm a Seaside resident, and I look at the chart and I say, do something. Seaside City Council, please do something. We need to do something. And we need to do it with partners, absolutely, with partners. Okay, there have been a number of people who have already come up here and said, we will partner with you. Focus on HEAP, yes, focus on HEAP, do it. Let's see if we can get some projects with the money. Seaside needs to step up and get this over with and get this done. Don't focus on negativity. Don't focus on people who are coming up here and saying, we like the homeless, but not here to, no, we have got an opportunity. Somebody's offered a shelter for these poor homeless people. Let's jump on it. We've only got a month. Let's do it. Let's get the women and the children in there first, just like a lifeboat, women and children first. And then let's take a look, what other kinds of things you can do with that HEAP money. I think that the mayor is absolutely right, there are lots of opportunities we can apply for, but remember it's $10 million that goes from Monterey County. So Seaside will get maybe a slice of the pie, but you gotta have good projects. And this particular shelter, it's already been zoned, it's already been offered, doesn't cost the city anything. Lots of partners have come up and said, well, we got to help you and offer services, so let's get it done. Please.
My name is Timothy Barrett. Blessed these people. Words from the invocation. Somebody else mentioned perspective, keep things in perspective. And to that I would also add balance. I would never presume to tell anybody what to think or even what decision to come to tonight, but I can tell you what I hope. And what I hope for is that everybody in this room, and I know the councilmen, will listen to each other and hear our words and take each other's thoughts and words into consideration as we come to our own well-rounded and well-thought-out positions. So I'll speak from what I know from personal experience, and I know, having been a policymaker in another city, I'll admit that oftentimes people jump to the worst-case conclusions. When they hear the word homelessness, the immediate reaction is to the worst-case scenario, the most intransigent, most stricken, most challenging case that there is. But I can tell you from my own personal experience, and we saw some documentation on the board today of that from the homeless census, that the vast majority of people who are in condition of living in unhoused circumstances, or nearly so, are very fine people. They're good people, and I can give you some examples. Andrew, a person I got to know who is homeless, he was a truck driver, and he developed a heart problem that made it unsafe for him to be on the road. And as a result of that, he was unemployed and became homeless. But he wanted to work, and it took community to help lift him back into housing, which eventually happened. I received a call just yesterday from someone who is a coworker of a mother with 2 children, a single parent, who is likely to become homeless in the next 2 weeks. She's working, she's challenged, she's part of our community, she's good people, she's not the worst case scenario, and she needs help right now. I was involved with permitting a gathering place for women in Monterey, who is one of the organizations that applied to partner with the city to run a facility at the location we're discussing tonight. And I can tell you that, and also Community Homeless Solutions both, that in the case of the gathering place for women, it runs virtually unnoticed by the community and provides great service. Thank you.
Honorable Mayor.
Just take a second. Every once in a while, we have to look at the timer, and when you see yellow, you have about 10 seconds. So it's on you to really look at the timer, but start now.
Certainly, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, City Manager Lynn. My name is Steve McShane. I'm a City Councilman in Salinas, and I'm a board member for Community Human Services. Homelessness is a regional challenge, and we need a regional solution. I can speak with confidence on behalf of our mayor and city councilmen that we want the City Council of Seaside to say yes to a homeless shelter in Seaside. Without question, you've got 2 great providers that have shown interest. Community Human Services has done incredible work in Monterey County and here on the Monterey Peninsula for over 50 years. They've teamed with a very reputable nonprofit. They're ready to go. I'd also speak very positively to Community Homeless Solutions in Salinas. On the front end of that shelter, the only 24/7 walk-in shelter in the county of Monterey, I had so many constituents speak to me about how dangerous it would be, how it would drop the property values, and it would be the worst thing for the community. And I stand before you today to tell you that it works, that the wraparound services and the ownership that's come about thanks to that shelter has made a difference. And I think the same thing will happen in Seaside. You see, homelessness is an ownership issue. It requires every single one of us to own it. We can't subcontract it. We can't pay somebody else to deal with it. And I think that the council's prepared today to make the right decision. I'd also say that I'm going to do what I can to reach out to every single one of you. And even though I come from the other side of the lettuce curtain, or you may have read something about me or those people in Salinas, I'm going to sit down, or at least attempt to sit down with each of you to make an appeal to work on this regionally. And just as Lisa pointed out, housing is the whole other piece of the puzzle. Salinas Valley has more water than we know what to do with. And my colleagues would probably stab me in the eye with a pencil saying, hey, let's use all the water in the Salinas Valley for the peninsula. But why can't we get past no and start thinking of yes when it comes to housing solutions that embrace the region? So do the right thing, vote yes, Salinas is behind you, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thanks.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak and giving us your time. Craig Bramhall, Seaside resident for 23 years. Right now, what pops into my head is the gentleman just spoke before me. I do not think you are ready to vote on this today. I disagree with the statement he made. You have incomplete information. You are still gathering, and you are still hearing the voice of the people. Some points I'm going to make. It was said to offer a solution. Just an idea. The site that used to be McDonald's, which is next to the Starbucks on Canyon Del Rey, they leveled that store. Well, what is that site going to be used for? You brought up, maybe moving this current building. So it's an empty lot now. That's one site. There's another possibility. How about the site between the park and the Chili's restaurant? Okay, it's another site which is open. And there is another site, I don't have a descriptor for it, but it is also Canyon Del Rey, an open lot. So you have open lots available in the Seaside city limits to either relocate, build, another possibility. Currently live in the block proposed for this site. The past week, 2 cars have been vandalized. Now, it's been police reported and documented, but I want to know that how are you going to address the possible vandalism and petty thefts that could occur for the people's needs that are homeless. There's an alley behind my house where I currently live. And currently, people use it for a dump site. So I would like to understand how the city is planning to clean that up as it exists. Furthermore, how they would address the possible homeless situation as it gathers in alleys. You have had PD and FD speak a little bit tonight about what they might incur. Now, again, that was I think they just pulled the information for tonight, that they from today to give tonight. But have you asked for, or have you been received a report written as you are gathering information for this possibility as well?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'd like to address the Honorable Mayor and Council. I have gotten to know a lot of you over the last couple of years, and I want to thank you for trying to do something here. I think it's great. I think one of the things that you're missing out on is storage, though. You need to address storage. I don't really think it matters that the building's on Broadway. There is a low-income housing unit on Broadway already. And I wasn't here at the last meeting. I'm terribly sorry. I really wanted to go, but I guess I was hibernating. I don't know what happened. But I wanted to put my 2 cents in worth this evening. I am for whatever possibilities that you come up with, and I trust you that you will do what you feel is right. And knowing you as I do, I have never shied away from letting people know who I was, although I don't always advertise. I will say that for people here that are concerned and afraid of people who are homeless, that you have misconceptions of who homeless people are. When I was 18 years old, I was given 1 day, less than 1 day, to get out of my house. My friend gave me $15 for a bus ticket, and I went to Palo Alto. While I was there, I stopped off at the welfare department trying to find some help. I was given a few minutes of a counselor's time, and I was told that she could not help me. That her suggestion to me was that I go to a nightclub, meet a man that might be, I consider, interesting, don't ask his name, and that I would be able to get services 9 months later. So, and this is a true story. So I want you to understand that not every teen out there is a bad kid. Not every homeless person is a bad person. And I've seen a lot of you, maybe in the past 25 years that I've lived here, and I've seen you in Costco, I've seen you at meetings, and I just want you to understand. I want you to understand that I didn't ask to grow up in the family that I grew up in. I didn't ask for my father to die. I didn't ask for a lot of things. But damn it, I've gotten up off the ground every single time. And I just want you to understand that that's what these people need, and that's what they want. They need services. They don't need a place to sleep. They need services.
Thank you so much for your output.
Hi, my name is Chris Cook, and I'm a resident of Monterey. I'd like to thank the City Council for taking the initiative on this project despite the inevitable criticism they would face. Getting to pursue this option with the county was absolutely the right thing to do, given the time constraints on the grant money. During the listening session last week, critics of this project painted a picture of homelessness which was prejudiced and dehumanizing. They mostly failed to recognize that homeless are already here and in number. They also failed to recognize that many of the people that they interact with on a day-to-day basis are homeless, and they just don't know it. Homelessness is a woman who spent her savings on a security deposit at first month's rent. A week later, the police show up and say their landlord is actually a squatter renting his property illegally. They make her move out, she loses her rent and her deposit. With no close friends to count on and no family in town to stay with, she ends up sleeping in her car for a month until 2 paychecks later, she's able to move into another place. And this woman is your coworker. Another is a man who is lukewarm about the raise he just got, another 10 cents an hour. Surely this will help him keep more than $100 in his bank account at any given moment. The excitement is dashed when the new owners of the apartment building raised his rent by $400 a month. And 2 years ago, this was the cheapest place he could rent. His manager at work is sympathetic, but can't schedule him any more than 30 hours a week that he's already working. This man has a check right at a grocery store. Just think about how many people were pushed out of their homes and rentals during the financial crisis of 2008. Many never fully recovered, and today more people are living in debt and financial precarity than in the years leading up to that crisis. a similar crisis is likely going to happen again. And when it does, will we not be glad we decided to build a shelter on the peninsula when we have a chance? I can't say if using the grant money to build a shelter specifically is the best use of it. I haven't studied homelessness, so I can't say authoritatively where this money should go. What I can say is that a shelter in Seaside would clearly be a social good, and taking the option off the table because of reasons like it might hurt the economy or a shelter would be a blight on the community is irresponsible and craven. Homelessness isn't a blight upon the community, it's a blight upon people who are forced to be homeless. We shouldn't be reluctant to help. Instead, we should be proud to do so. And beyond HEAP, one thing that we can do to help people who are precarious and perhaps about to be homeless is to rent control. The most frequently cited obstacle to permanent housing is rent unaffordability. That's too high. And that's really it. Thank you for listening.
Greetings. First off, I have a signed letter from Mary Mitchell, a 40-plus year resident of Seaside, a retired educator and a CHS board member for 25 years. Her letter is in support of the Broadway Notre Dame location, and I will leave this letter with the council. My name is Robert Rapp, and I'm a resident of Monterey and the Development Director of Community Human Services. I urge the city to support a proposal to establish and operate a resource center with overnight accommodations tentatively proposed at the Notre Dame Broadway site. In a perfect world, we would serve everyone, but depending on space and practicality, this proposed project would prioritize families and children first, women second, and men third. Somebody had said that earlier. Good programming would be the key to this project. In addition to overnight lodging, case planning and case management would be offered to help guests obtain income, employment, and housing as a pathway out of homelessness. Substance abuse and mental health services will be offered on-site or coordinated between service providers. Family services will include parenting education and child after-school programs that provide homework help and recreational activities. Dinner and breakfast will be served on-site. Transportation will be provided every day at other peninsula locations. Some people will go back to their communities, some will go to work, children will go to school. Some will stay on-site to receive services. We've had numerous discussions with iHelp, our local McKinley-Vento liaison, the One Starfish program. We're working together on this. We're confident that we can have transportation plans that will keep guests from milling around the neighborhood outside of operating hours. Perhaps most importantly, these services will be provided by trained professionals who understand case management and have experience working with the homeless and other service providers. This program is not to warehouse people. It's to help them find their way out of homelessness. Thank you.
City Council, Mayor, citizens. First thing, Pastor Lusk is my name. First thing I'd like to say is, you see how cold it is in here?
Yeah.
Imagine how many homeless people are colder outside. So we talk about we don't want homeless or where we want it or where we don't. Everybody, if you snap your finger and you twinkle your eye in any situation, circumstance of life, everybody in this room can be homeless. Let's stop talking about what homeless people are and what they're not. They're human beings who've been through a situation in life which ends up having them where they are. And I say again, everybody in this room, no matter how much money you have right now, tomorrow, a catastrophic world change, we could all be homeless. Let's start focusing on how we help the homeless. Here's my issue. There are kids in NPUSD, Salinas Unified School District, Greenfield Unified School District, whether you be PG, Carmel, Marina, Monterey, it doesn't matter what city you live in. There are homeless kids in every school district, in every school on this peninsula. I'm still on the green. Let's stop focusing on whose program is better, whose program is not. Let's stop pitching for your program and let's pitch just to help. If your program really wants to help, get with the city. Do what's best for the city of Seaside, not your program in Seaside. The mayor is correct. Everything he mentioned, Seaside needs it. Substance abuse young people, I'm still on green. Substance abuse adults, homeless adults, homeless young people. Do you know how many kids come home from school and go sleep in a car when you go sleep at home? Will you let them sleep in your house? A homeless person off the street and you don't even know them? Can they come on your door, knock on your door, and come in your house? I doubt it. So why are we trying to dictate what they should have and how they should have it? We should be focusing on helping those that need help. And if you don't agree with what I'm saying, I don't care. Right is right. If you have the money, oh, this way, I'm sorry, you always got to help me. If we have the money, and we have the means, and we have people that are going to help us, I want this council to remember one thing. I've been saying it since I got back. Seaside first. Everybody else and everything else second. Seaside first. And if we focus on, I'm in the yellow now, Seaside first, then everything we need for Seaside will grow in Seaside. Then our community will be better from Carmel, PG, Marina, Salinas. I'm in the yellow still. Now I'm in the red. Thank you.
Hello? Hear me okay? Okay, my name is Tom Sullivan. I'm a resident of Seaside. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager. Thank you for putting this up on the board. We've got decisions to make. My qualification here is that I do live in Seaside in a home, but at one time I didn't. And I know what it's like to be homeless. I'm a success story, and the agencies that are proposing to partner with you are part of the solution. And we're moving forward here tonight. Should we do something? Yeah. There's no doubt. It's a no-brainer. Should we do it alone? No. We should do it together. And the agencies that have proposed to you are already on the path. I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for widening the horizon of what the funding can provide, but the shelter is needed. And I have personally witnessed Community Human Services and Gathering for Women help friends and family move forward. And I hope that you folks will support that. Tonight's tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor, staff. The first night I was homeless, I pulled up to Embassy Suites, as I had done many times, when I was gadding about town, running many errands, doing many different things. I'd stop by there to put on a little lipstick, freshen up my hair, sometimes even change clothes. But the day I was homeless, my only shelter was my car. My car was packed to the gills with what I would need, what I believed I would need. Once I parked the car, I was so scared, even though I'd gone in Embassy Suites many times as a customer and just to use the restroom. I thought they would know that I was homeless. I thought somebody might call and tow away my car. I thought they might come up and ask me to leave, and I'd be embarrassed. I freshened up my lipstick, my car was still there, then I came to this building because I had promised Pastor Kenny that I would come to a fundraiser that was going on here. I had filled a table, as I said I would. It was in honor of Mayor Rubio's birthday. I forget what the cause was, but Pastor Kenny asked me to be there, and he had been there for me and for our program. I helped many times. I was going to be there for him. Timothy Barrett, who's here, was at my table. Dr. Tia Sukin, who thought of the safe parking program, she was at our table. I forget who else. But anyway, nobody knew. I'm doing okay now. That was a few years ago. But I'm what a homeless person looks like. Working, volunteering. I come tonight bringing greetings from iHelp, the Interfaith Homeless Emergency Lodging Program. Our chair, Tony Finnegan, cannot be here. Seaside was part of this network around the peninsula, sheltering folks. It's a nomadic shelter program. We pick up men and women, different sites, take them to congregations to sleep for the night, have a hot meal, be safe, and know they can count on that at night. You've got 4 or 5 churches here that participate and many more community groups. Thank you for doing that, Seaside. You'll do the right thing. There are many options for you, and you're doing stuff now. But a fact is that in Seaside, there are 58 people who are sheltered and 107 who are not. And that's per the last homeless census, point in time census a couple years ago. Who knows with this one? But thank you for this really good process. Sounds like you've got some great options. I too have had a wonderful experience with the Gathering for Women and Community Human Services, but you'll do the right thing. But I think this is just going to be great. It's appropriate, it's required, it's needed, and I'm sure you guys will come up with a great idea. Thank you.
Good evening, council people, city manager. My name is Bob Constant, and I'm a Seaside resident. I hear 2 issues tonight that need to be resolved. One is, should we go forward and do something? Yes, we should do it with whatever partner makes sense. That's great. The second, and probably as important, is that we need to continue the discussion that was started on the 13th, thanks to Mr. Wizard and Mr. Pacheco, and is being continued tonight. But we have an issue that has the attention of Seaside residents. I think the city council needs to continue this discussion and find out what goals and objectives the citizens have in mind for this city, and then y'all need to come up with a plan of action. And that plan of action may be directed down towards the Committee on Homeless to be your people, but rather than just handing them a project and not wanting to limit their purview, you limit the guidance that you give them. You need to give them a bunch of guidance about what your goals and objectives are, and we need to have that discussion, and the homeless issue probably needs to be worked through the next several months/years. The next thing is, city manager, one thing that I chose to miss reading up here is, with the money, with the HEAP money, if we were able to get it, how long would it support any given project? And I believe the mayor was absolutely correct that there were not just a shelter, but a myriad of projects that could be done. How long could that money be used for? If it only lasts a year, not sure its value. If it lasts 2 or 3 years, yeah, then you're getting enough bang to actually fix something. And if the location at, 1292 Broadway doesn't work for the city, how about the Dome building also on Broadway? That used to be the, what was it? It was a gym for a while. It's been boarded up. It's Broadway Market. It's just sitting there. It's an eyesore. It's a lot more square footage. And when we talk about services, in difference to shelter, but services, you could have a lot of different agencies represented. But thank you for having the meeting. Thank you for your time.
Good evening to everybody. It's late and we're all tired. I'm Rosemary Axton. I sit on the board of iHelp also. But maybe as importantly, I've had a very long career with the county and with nonprofits and homeless work and working with those that have less in mental illness and the myriad complex problems that people bring to the plate. And homelessness is the hardest. It's absolutely the hardest to work with. You have good possibilities with the Gathering for Women and Community Human Services, but this is a big chunk, 40 beds. And I live up the street, less than a half a mile away. When I thought about it deeply, what I thought about was More than 7% of the children that go to school in MPUSD are in homeless families. And social services, and I have many friends still working in mental health, they rack their brains using every possible means they can to find housing for these folks. That moment, that day, 1 week in one hotel, 1 week in another. I support a shelter for families. It is desperately needed. Nothing like this exists in the whole peninsula. We do emergency shelter with 24 giving faith communities and Rotary clubs and community clubs of all kinds supporting us. And we struggled with whether or not we would apply for these funds. We really struggled with it because there's a lot of needs. One of the big problems with this is that you have to decide by this Friday what's going to happen. And then you have 1 month. And my understanding is if you didn't come to the bidders conference this Friday with a proposal in mind, that you could not, they would not take any of your applications after. April 1st is the deadline for those that go to the bidders conference when they sort out where the money will go. And another very hidden thing tonight that hasn't been said is that Salinas has their eyes on this money to build a shelter in Salinas from the ground up. So I'm not sure how much would be available, but I think there's enough available to do a family shelter over here on Olympia. I used to work in that building. It can accommodate 40 people. And a family shelter, can you imagine if you partnered with MPUSD to get families who are homeless into a comfortable, stable place with the design that Community Human Services and the Gathering for Women have in mind to make it successful. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Seaside has many needs and they're all good.
Hi, I'm Seal. I was houseless for about 3 years. And I did a lot of work to get back on my feet. Started with police officer Jenkins in Monterey Recovery Center. I came here tonight with Thomas Muir, who he's a social worker. He detoxed me at Jean. Told me about it. I go out on the streets on my own time, have a regular job, and I'm together because I understand. And I go out and talk to people, and I try and solve their immediate stressor. I completely get it. I know these people, and I do this because it makes sense to me, and it's not so much about all these services, it's about the approach. And I think shelter is a great approach because you're meeting people where they're at. You're going to work to alleviate that immediate stressor so you can build them up from there. I think what's really important to remember is it's a process. Someone who's been on the streets for a while, there's going to be damage. There's mental health issues, abuse issues, neglect, abandonment, drugs and alcohol. You have to reach past all that, address that. And there needs to be a level ground where those issues can be addressed. And that shelter, right there, it's laid out. I also know people on the streets, they try to start working, and they really are trying, but they're still on the streets. So them progressing becomes an issue. And they're really trying, and they really want it. So, Evangelina's going to talk. She's from Women's Gathering. I love her. I talk to her, Thomas Jenkins, on a regular basis because I completely get it. And I would say that a shelter absolutely makes sense. But I don't think it needs to be complicated. Well, what about this? What about that? You need to start somewhere. And that's accessible. That's all.
Well, I'll tell you who I'm not. I'm not Angelina.
pastor of Oldemeyer Baptist Church, Seaside resident, advocate for those that are disfranchised, those that are homeless, those that are re-entering society from prison or jail, and those that are just down on their luck. What I don't see up there is a faith-based community. Appreciate, and that shouldn't be a church and state issue, appreciate Ms. Arabu. That was the mayor's luncheon from Mr. Rubio that we brought those organizations in. I've had to personally experience homelessness as a pastor. This time last year, I was homeless for 9.5 months. This time last year, I was laying in community hospital, not expected to be here today, but God. Slept in my church office for 3.5 months, and then the red roof in on Fremont, Monterey became my home for about 6.5 months of me and my wife and daughter and 3 grandchildren. So I have personally experienced homelessness. And don't matter where you come from, homelessness is not a respected person. And homeless people ain't trash. And homeless people are just like anybody else. They're just going through a certain situation. I thank Pastor Harold for coming up and saying what he has, but if you're going to do anything, the faith-based community has to be included in that. By whatever level. We at Ocean View have been hosting the I Help Men for over 19 years. The church that I grew up in Pastor Pacific Grove has been what I Help for over 22 years. And so I know what it is to be there. And I know what it is to work with the Gathering for Women and for Community Human Services on a personal level, through Genesis House with Miss Robin. We are, oh Lord, that red orange light is on. Please give me one more minute. I beg, because this is a story that needs to be told. And now the agency's had over 3 minutes. But I'm just asking for 30 seconds, man. I don't want to disrespect, but Seaside needs to come first. And then maybe we should have started this meeting at 6 or 5 o'clock, because you got a lot of people in here, but you need to listen to the Seaside residents and understand that we need to be involved from the church standpoint. All right.
Good evening. I'm Evangelina Ochoa, former Seaside resident of over 30 years, and the mother of a student at the dual immersion school for the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, which of course you all know it's located in Seaside. I am the program director at Gathering for Women, and as a career I've been providing case management services to the homeless population in all forms over the last 8 years. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. Today's opportunity for the Seaside City Council to make a big impact, not only to the lives of the residents of Seaside, but a bigger impact as a leader of other cities on the Monterey Peninsula. As a program director, I oversee the case management program at Gathering for Women. Our program has a robust case management program that offers navigation services to help every person reach their goals and move forward on their pathway out of homelessness. As a program director, I've seen firsthand how case management services affect those lives of the most underserved citizens in our community. Since Gathering for Women opened their doors, over 900 women have been served by Gathering for Women. 250 of those women, our women, consider themselves to be from the city of Seaside. At Gathering for Women, we provide, as Kate already mentioned, hot meals, showers, clothes closet, workforce development programs, a technology center, and we work collaboratively and closely with other community partners. to help our homeless women. Having a shelter in Seaside would not only provide a place for a warm, restful night, but it would also provide access to an on-site services of case management, just as women do each day at Gathering for Women. Residents of the shelter would have access to individualized support and services, helping each resident in the shelter to reach their goals. Case management services provide the necessary support to help people achieve long-term stability. Why is the stability of a homeless person so important in the entire community? It strengthens our community. It keeps neighborhoods safe and free from unhealthy living conditions. It reduces crimes. It helps reduce the fear and misinterpretations of what it means to be homeless. The location of the shelter in the city of Seaside is essential. It's close to where most of the auxiliary services are located too. Living conditions can change overnight for anyone, as you've already heard tonight. Imagine you're a mom of 3 children, ages 11, 9, and 7. You've been widowed, and you're working full-time, however, can't afford rent on the peninsula at the moment. Instead of living in your car or on the streets, you could live in a shelter with 3 kids. You have access to case management services to help you reach your goal of finding permanent housing for you and your 3 kids. On behalf of all of the homeless citizens on the Monterey Peninsula, we are counting on the Seaside City Council to help this go through. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Anjanette Love. I'm the case manager slash navigator for Gathering for Women. And I'm here to read a letter that was presented to us in, I guess, from one of our clients, our guests. It reads, I am a 44-year-old female who, for the purpose of this testimonial, will remain anonymous. Due to circumstances beyond my control, I found myself stranded and homeless in the city of Seaside, California. I tried to seek assistance and guidance from a non-governmental relief agency in Seaside, and I was without money, shelter. I was 6 months pregnant at the time, and the agency was kind enough to feed me, but informed me that there were no resources available for my housing situation. The iHelp program would not accept me because I was pregnant. The transitional housing program in Seaside would not accept me because I was unable to work within 30 days. That left me to the only option, that left me with the only option, which was to sleep outside. I was terrified. Not only had I been through a dramatic situation, being stranded in a place that I knew no one, I with no money. I was left with no money in a city that I knew absolutely nothing about. But I was now having to sleep outside on the cold ground around people who were under the influence of drugs and alcohol. I was cold, scared, and felt completely homeless. I finally met a few women which were also homeless. They told me of a place I could go after the long weekend was over, a place called Gathering for Women. I arrived at the Gathering for Women the following Monday. I signed up for services and case management. Together, my case manager and I came up with a detailed goal plan, which I followed and completed. Would be considered one of the steps closer to solving my housing situation. I have worked very hard and very closely with the Gathering for months now, and I'm almost there. I have completed job re-entry classes at GFW to tackle my goals of gainful employment after the birth of my child. I have worked very diligently at the process of obtaining a house voucher. I have obtained all necessary documentation and applied for services needed while getting back on my feet. I feel that the city of Seaside, working together with Gathering for Women and Community Human Services, to assist women and families during times of crisis is needed badly. The community, that's it.
Don't push the green button yet, I'm not there. All right, let's do it. Alan Katz, 5-year resident of Seaside. I gotta tell you, I love Seaside. We lived here in Florida 5 years ago. And I actually worked with the homeless in my job, not directly but indirectly. I had a lot of homeless people I supervised. I've actually been over to Northeast Kitchen and had the honor to serve in lunch, being part of the lunch crew over there with some kids that were volunteering with me. So I know a little bit about the homeless. But first, let's get into some details here. We need to do something. Absolutely. It's our obligation, it's our desire. I don't think there's anybody in this room that wants to turn away a pregnant woman in need or a woman that's a victim of domestic violence with kids or without kids or whatever. We all want to do this, but let's get our facts straight based on our own information. So we're really looking at the facts. If we do this thing, we're not doing it to reduce homelessness in Seaside. If you look at the last census, the one that we were quoting up here, which I looked at earlier, it said there were 2,837 homeless people, and then they had a chart. Homelessness is going up in Marina and in Delray Oaks, but it has gone down 60% in Seaside since 2013. I just looked at this stuff a couple hours ago. We do need to do something. I didn't know the Salvation Army had a 9-month transitional housing program until I looked at it earlier today. And I think that's great. We've only had, according to the police chief, we've had 5 requests for assistance there. Well, that's great, and I think that speaks a lot to the fact that the criteria I was reading online is they only allow families with children there, period. So I support that, but we need to look at the facts. I think we should do something. I think one of the elephants in the room here, one of the big things in the room here, from my neighbors, I live up one hill, we bought a house there 3 years ago, I think. One of the elephants here is, I never heard of something called the pit until I came to the meeting last week. Apparently, for the people that have been here a long time, there was an area where this place is going that used to be a high drug traffic crime. And for the last 20 years, you've been pushing to clean it up, and you've gotten it there. And I think one of the big open concerns is we don't want to go backwards. I'm not saying to put it there or not there. I don't know. I'm just saying that's something that I think is a scar that our community has, and we have to address. Or how are we going to take steps to keep it from turning back into what it was? I'd like you to think about doing a collaboration, whatever we do, a collaborative effort. I'd like to work, we can't, homelessness encompasses so many different people and so many different situations, and we just can't say someone's homeless, this is what a homeless person is. I totally agree with that. I totally agree we should do something, but we also need to look at the other, what I heard last week in the discussions afterward, where that this is a dumping ground. So we don't want to do that either. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
My name is Sylvia Shi. I'm a Seaside resident. And first of all, I love the mayor's rule of 2 minutes because I know the citizens of Seaside love to talk. We will never get out of here. It will be good night. Anyway, I come here to add my voice. 3 things. Yes, do something. Yes, partner with somebody. Yes, widen the vision, not only just this project, but the other project like the mayor has suggested. I also say, seize the moment, the opportunity to go with this current project because we have the building, some people is giving you that, and we have the money, and we have the partners. And I would love the decision to be made today because we don't have a lot of time. There is a lot of problems. We can solve them one by one, but do the first one. Don't kick the can down the road again. Thank you.
She's pretty good at insulting all the Seaside residents at once. It's pretty good. Daryl Shote, I've been here 56 years. Yes, I was at the last meeting. First question I have that I would like Don Freeman to respond to when it's time. is this project going to require a full-blown EIR? Because when we approved for that site there, it was a total different use and all that is now coming to a different type of use, major different type of use. None of the residents were invited around the project area yet because it's not a project. But at the last meeting between Dave and Wizard, we're talking $12 million. Somehow we lost $2 million since that meeting. Now I'm hearing $10 million. And I don't think any of you said, that is just not this project. That is the entire county's amount. So it sounds like everybody's thinking $10 million. Well, we're not thinking $10 million. And I believe the last total I heard, it might be about $2 million. So that's the urgency of trying to get money. And I always say, all money ain't good money. But I would say the worst, and I mean the best project I've heard is in Marina right now. It answers about all of the stuff about homeless. We're trying to just get somebody somewhere to sleep at night, get up at 6:30 in the morning, and leave. I don't like that. I really don't like that. And the reason why is in Salinas, on Soledad, and even in San Francisco, they did that. And every day, once you left at 6:30, you just went out on the street and sat there because you wanted to be the first one to get to bed for the next day. And that's how it grows. It grows, and next thing you know, it becomes a new thing. And that's now you got a Salinas Soledad Street, or whatever that street is. That's how that happened. You know, I know a lot of you guys haven't lived in Seaside long. And yeah, you heard some sad stories of the pit. Yeah, that used to be the worst place in America, right there in that corner. But you know, I think we need to do something bigger, better, and organized. I like when all these organizations come here, but you know, when you watch them, they all don't work together. When they need to sit down in a room, a round table, and come together with a single plan, you're talking Monterey Peninsula. You want it all right here in Seaside. I looked at the study and I noticed you didn't mention nothing about that, Mr. City Manager. Seaside had 98 homeless in the study. Monterey had over 2,000 homeless in the study. And there was different numbers throughout the other. So when you decide on a regional center, you're telling everything outside and inside to come to that one location. So how is 30 beds going to resolve that? It's not. Now, I thought the corner of Kimbo and right across from the dog park is a perfect spot to put this. It's a big location. It's got a lot of room, and that church wants to do this. And just so you know, all these churches in here need to be commended. And they're not.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That was 2 minutes and 14 seconds. I got the timer up here.
Yeah, 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
No. Okay. Last one. Anyway, if anything happens, I support a women's shelter there. I think the women have that program together, and they're less problematic.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, hi. Let's see, so, blank on the okay.
Take your time.
It's okay, I didn't say anything important. All right, so it sounds like we already have a lot of partners who are willing to work on the issue, and so not to belabor those points, but one thing I wanted to add is to consider having some funding to address people who live in motorhomes who need somewhere to park their motorhomes, and also to service their motorhomes, their emptying their septic tanks, whatever it is. I believe that the RV parks that are around here only accept motorhomes that are on the newer end. I don't remember exactly what year their cutoff is, but that is one service that hasn't been mentioned that I think would really, really help people who are sort of owned. But yeah, that's about it.
Good evening. Lisa Ansani. Like Councilwoman Wizard, preparing for this meeting, I refreshed my memory on Seaside's 2040 vision from the general plan draft. I request all on this council align their vote with the city's stated 2040 vision. A city-sponsored homeless shelter off of Upper Broadway does not align with the vision and major strategies as outlined in Chapter 1. As the property exists on the very tip of Block 137 per changes to the zoning last year, on the 3 other corners, there would need to be a variance for this to even be considered. The county has the right to create a shelter, utilizing its resources and HEAP funds, but it certainly doesn't need to be encouraged, funded, or run in any capacity by the city and this council. Also, what happens in 2 years when the HEAP funds are spent? Is the city accepting liability to address Monterey County's homeless population? Of the 16 major strategies in Chapter 1, highlighted in the general plan, number 1, yes, number 1, is to create a vibrant downtown Seaside within both West and East Broadway. And I don't know how much time because of the timer, unfortunately I'm used to the other place. Page 26, I quote, East Broadway Avenue will be transformed into mixed-use centers and have diverse residential options and corridors with retail on the ground level. There are 8 empty lots, including 2 blocks of bare land of unused buildings within a 3-block radius west of the proposed shelter site on Broadway. I've spoken to and have heard from others in this community that developers will rescind and not be interested in investing in Seaside if this Broadway shelter goes forward. And Mayor Oglesby, I appreciate that maybe we weren't just supposed to think about the homeless shelter on Broadway, but that was what's in your packet and what was proposed. Especially after a multi-million-dollar redevelopment investment of city, county, and state funds on Broadway to date. This includes European and Asian cities I visited. I, like here so many tonight, have compassion, and still not in yellow, that's good, for the homeless and many within the county struggling to make ends meet. It is why I have been vocal about opportunities for economic growth and partnerships with core employers and growth opportunities within Seaside. It's not something I've heard much discussed tonight. Employment and affordable housing also go hand in hand and will help some of the homeless. One-time funding opportunities like HEAP proposal will not address long-term county needs, and it certainly can find a more appropriate location for this unused mobile building to provide shelter for the county's homeless. I changed my comments after the mayor had spoken because I do think there are a lot of options and things that could be done. But again, Upper Broadway to me is not the place for a full-fledged homeless shelter. You know, we could do things like the rehabilitative services during the day.
Thank you so much.
Oh, the yellow and the red is really close. Thank you.
Helen Rucker, 50-plus years resident, City of Seaside. Do something with partners. If you like the proposal to work with the county and utilize that building, go ahead and do it. But do something. But the one thing I came up here to say was the city should have brought our plan, the entire plan of how we plan to deal with the homeless. Since that hasn't been done, it must be done immediately in order to make sure that all the things that the mayor did mention that we could be doing and working with all of these homeless providers who have shown that they can work with the city of Seaside, like Community Human Services, who I've worked with for years. But do something.
Good evening. Brenda Thomas, citizen of Seaside for 60-plus years. Also a property manager in low-income housing for 40 years. I have housed across this country more than 1,000 homeless people. I have nothing against homeless people. My problem here today is that everybody who's speaking about what we should do in Seaside are not from Seaside.
And that bothers me. I just found out tonight that you have a housing study program, you know, a committee. Did you take the time to talk to the citizens of Seaside to find out what we thought? I'm in a sense almost that I have been sitting here, I retired last year, and I've been sitting here with all this knowledge, and nobody asked me to help. And I certainly am a volunteer. This community knows I volunteer on a lot of things. 40 years ago, managed Ripley River in Carmel Valley. I handled their transition to low-income housing. I handled 2 hotels in Salinas that were in transition when they were tearing those down. I personally managed those. Use your resources for the people who live here, who know what has gone on. I didn't come up here to instruct you. You know, actually I came up here to volunteer. I don't want to give you my resume, but believe me, had you sought out some people who really knew what was going on in Seaside, who has a heart for Seaside, because this is my home. I've worked all over the country, but this is my home. And it really incenses me to find out that you've made decisions about rezoning our neighborhood. Rezoning our neighborhood. When? Who had the bright idea to make Broadway or Obama Way at Noche Buena? Who made that idea? Who's on that? It wasn't always retail. It wasn't. But you guys need to use the resources of the people who live in this city. There's a lot of knowledge here. There's a lot of love here. And I plan to make sure that in the future, you guys talk to the citizens. Thank you.
Okay, so about a month ago, I suggested to Mr. Pacheco that it would be essential to hear the voices of the homeless themselves. And I also told him that I myself would try to communicate with them. So I did. I went to a Salvation Army Center behind Costco, and I gathered about a dozen or so of the people that were there, and they were able to give me input and hear some of the thoughts. First of all, they would like to be treated respectfully. They know that sometimes when they go to places to get services, they feel that they are treated, quote, like dirt. The second thing is that the location to them doesn't really matter much. What was important was that they would be able to have free transportation to and from the site. Another thing that they wanted was a safe storage place where they can leave their belongings and not have to cart them around. Some of them have bikes and they would like to have a place to park them, a way to get training so they can become employable, hygienic provisions, flashlights, bicycles, backpacks, first aid boxes, sleeping bags, a place to shower, wash the clothes, like they have in the Salvation Army, but even more of those, a safe place for vehicles parking, and mental health counseling. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Lisa Mitchell, Seaside resident. So thank you for a point of clarity, Mr. Mayor, for noting all of the other services that this grant would entail. But for another point of clarity, if I was speaking from 1600 Pennsylvania, I would think that we didn't care about the people or the homeless need in Seaside. People keep coming to this mic as if we think that the homeless people in Seaside are peasants. They're people just like we are, and they deserve the help. People we as citizens just don't want it on that corner. You spend too much money to upgrade Broadway to bring it back down. There's nothing against the homeless people, because in our wellness day, all of us are sick enough to die, and one situation away from being homeless. We can wake up feeling like we're on top of the world and lay down with the world on top of us. Nobody is exempt. And just for the record, no disrespect against your party, if we keep messing with the person at 1600 Pennsylvania, we all might be homeless though. We all might be trying to live in that building. So we are not in opposition of helping the homeless in Seaside. Seaside is a community, and we come together. We have a moral and a Christian responsibility to help one another out. So I would appreciate it if people would just stop coming to this mic as if we want to do away with the homeless, put the homeless down, say that we're scared of the homeless. The homeless people are our people. Those are our relatives. Those people are connected to us some kind of way. We're not scared of them. We're not embarrassed by them. We're not afraid of them. We want to extend our hand to help them get up. But it's the method by which we do it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Horn, Dr. Horn, and I have been a resident here in Seaside for over 50 years. As a healthcare provider, I have cared for many homeless men and women. And I think Lisa just said it best. My biggest concern is when I keep hearing people trying to convince us that there's a need to take care of the homeless, or that we need to make sure that they're treated in a dignified and respectful way. I know that everyone I know in Seaside already believes that. We don't need to be convinced. But as a long-term resident of Seaside, my biggest concern is the location. I've learned a lot tonight that really concerns me, because it sounds like there's monies out here for wonderful programs that I know we need. I have one patient in particular that I took care of, who had moved here and was living in her car. And I mean, I worked night and day to make sure we got things for her, because she didn't feel safe. So I know we need these programs. But the question I have, once we go back to discussion with you all, is how do we meet these needs and meet this deadline? We've got this deadline hanging over our head that if it's not met, the grant money is gone. Okay? And then the other question I have is it feasible? Because if it's not, you guys need to tell us. Don't lead us down a path and let us think that something's possible when it's not. Is it even possible to move this to another location? Because that's the big elephant in the room, is people aren't happy with the location. But is it even a possibility to meet the needs of this grant in a timely fashion with moving it to another location? Because if it's not, somebody needs to say something. Thank you.
Mayor and City Council, my name is Dennis Wolf, resident of Seaside and also. As I listen to people speak tonight, I think two things. And one of them is that years ago, families took care of families. You know, our cousins, you know, had bedtime. Our mother, father took in my aunt and uncle. We all lived together. My family was 10 children. My aunt came to live with us with 5 more. We were all in a 3-bedroom house. People take care of people. We're not doing that anymore. And I would just oppose to the crowd here tonight that we all kind of look at our situations and open our hearts and our homes to our neighbors, our friends, and our families, which would probably alleviate half of the problem. With that being said, I think the police chief's here tonight, and I think for some of us that are being accused of being afraid of the homeless and being scared, I think the police chief should have a meeting with the residents of Seaside and decide what to do about the homeless problem, if that's what you want to call it, because we have people that are living on the streets, that are sleeping in businesses' hallways. They're in the park down at Laguna Grande, And there are people that are afraid to take their families down there. And so the reality is that if some of these people are breaking the law and they're urinating or running up on us and scaring us and screaming at us and hurting our children or trying to throw sticks and stones at us, when we do call the police department, we don't want to hear there's nothing we can do about it. That's part of the problem. I think we should find out what's legal, what's not legal. If they're allowed to sleep in the park, then they're allowed to sleep in the park. But are they allowed to sleep in the businesses' doorways, and are they allowed to, one incident at a church, a homeless van pulled up and parked at the church. The church was trying to accommodate a big party that day. They couldn't put up their tent because the van was there. The guy wouldn't come out of his van. Called the police, not much they could do about it. So we need to find out what we can do about the problems that are being created. And we need the police chief's direction on that. Up at the top of Hill where I live, there's been some break-ins, some cars being gas taken out of it. When they followed one of them, they went over into Ford on the other side of the hill, and they're living and starting to camp there. We've called the police, we've talked about it, and they're aware of it, but they don't know what to do about it. So with these problems, we have to find out what we can do about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would ask any other public comments, please line up please line up.
Hi, my name is Grace Rubio, Seaside City resident. I agree with several of the most recent speakers about how Seaside residents feel about homeless people in our community, and I can fully agree that it's a segment of our community that we live with, not afraid of them, have a lot of empathy for them. My concern is the timing of this and the urgency of it. This came up very fast. I know there was a letter issued by the city on January 17th expressing interest in the possibility of participating to apply for these funds, but I don't know that, and I certainly didn't know as a citizen that had actually even happened, that was even a possibility. So I think that it would have been best to have maybe that conversation before that letter went out somehow, some kind of communication with the citizens. That way this discussions could have started happening much sooner. I also am very concerned about the location of the shelter. I'm thankful that the mayor has pointed out all the other possibilities, all the other funding that would be available for different programs and services that I think are vital in the community. But my question is, why this particular location? I understand it's easier for the county because the building is already there and it's been zoned, but I don't know that it's the best location to serve a greater number of people with the greater need. My question is, what other locations can be looked at? I know we have a brand new Seaside Family Health Center that's got a huge parking lot that is set back off the street. Maybe part of that property could be used. Maybe the former One Stop Career Center could be looked at. I don't know that the location on Noche Buena and Broadway is big enough to really address a pretty big need. So the question is, should we be awarded this grant? What is the time frame? How quickly? What will we be mandated to do about the shelter? Would it have to be there, and how long would it take to get it operational, or how long would it take to get it operational at a different location, bigger, more improved, more regionally focused, maybe somewhere else on the region? Thank you.
Good evening again. Ms. Swami, Seaside homeowner, resident. I wasn't going to speak about this, but only three people use the word plan. My better half, Mr. Shode, and Ms. Waka. Now, I've been in the middle of a planning exercise. Some of you who've gotten to know me know
That's part of my job. I do 3, 5, and 7-year plans on a line of products that nobody wants to hear about. There is no plan. At least if there is one, we haven't heard it. There is no revenue forecast. My boss would ask me, how are you going to make money? So we've got just about $2 million that we could probably spend in 6 months. And everybody just sees a pile of money in this town and wants to apply for a grant right away. If you want to address a problem, you want to provide social services, get employment. One of the biggest problems that leads to homelessness is lack of employment. And there is no real employment on this peninsula other than the government and retail and hospitality. We, as a city, have the opportunity to invite industry. And we have to seize this opportunity. Thanks to AOC, Amazon is looking for another headquarters again. Why aren't we pitching for that? We have the land. They have the money. They'll bring 5,000 new jobs that pay well, and some that are, $10, $15, $25 jobs that some of these people can get. So how come nobody talks about bringing in some real employment to this area? That's just something that keeps me up sometimes. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Sam Rashkin. I live in Carmel Valley, that's in Monterey County. I have both public sector and private experience as a affordable housing analyst. I also work for the cities of Monterey, Pacific Grove under One Star Fish Safe Haven Parking Program. There is an absolute need for home services, and I support the Broadway project in theory. In terms of strict economics, if it's a building I'm thinking about one of the back of the site, to begin with, it has relatively low quality construction going into it. And on top of that, it's relatively old. So it's got significant physical depreciation, and the cost to get cured and convert that into a housing specific building could be significantly high. More importantly, the land underneath it that Seaside owns, I hope you own it, is very valuable. So you don't really want to spend a whole lot of money fixing up a broken old building on a site that could be better used in the future. That being said, if you can manage your costs, there's a win-win for the public here. Keep it as an interim use that can be used, adapted, and then updated when you find a more appropriate location that might work better. Also, my experience with homeless facilities it's the staffing, it's the cost to operate those things that really take a big chunk out of it, and also the public safety that the city provides. I'd like you, and as a non-Seaside resident, I want to agree with everyone here. Pacific Grove, where I've lived for 8 years, in Carmel Valley for 2, we're all part of this problem. There is no affordable housing, so as our housing goes up, the workforce, the people at the bottom of the rung move here, and if they lose their jobs, you're stuck with the problem. Please fight for every single dollar for the county. Please fight for every single dollar from Fora. You deserve it. And also, this problem exists all over the state. I spent time up in the Bay Area. In the Bay Area, it's getting worse and worse. There's programs we can adapt and apply here, and there's protections we can adapt and apply here. So please take advantage of those. And thank you very much.
Hi, Wes Weiss, resident, president of Census, Monterey County Homeless Union. I'm just trying to be a homeless representative, I guess. Effective programming is great, and if the shelter goes through or not, that's not really going to mitigate the bigger issue. You're going to need to open up parks or public space, like I just naturally alluded to. Where there's Boise, you can't actually arrest them or ticket them. You have to allow space. So maybe what you need is like more yurts or something, warehouse space. We're looking for cheap, right? You don't want to spend a penny. People already have affordable housing as it is because what they bought and what they're using is already their affordable housing. So tents, tarps, whatever. Congregate, you have a continuum of care. So sign them up for services or at least identify them. A lot of people around here are from Seaside and going to stay in Seaside. Those people should be recognized, identified, not the other, not the homeless. Because homeless is a civil rights movement of our era, and I keep hearing this other concept And it's like, you know, it's money is a discriminating factor, and that's you know, we've got to overcome that, and I'm glad that it feels like you're moving forward with that with the new ordinance that you're putting up. So I'd love to help suggest something for you. But yeah, yurts, I think would be good. Hand washing stations, toiletries, you know, and have them congregate at a side of a park or a side of a vacant lot. You know, to partner with private owners who've got like an acre of property or 5 acre property, or you know, I don't know how much space you actually got, but you know, I mean, people deserve to be in their neighborhoods where they're familiar with their surroundings and they go in their own little circle. They just need a safe place to be at night, a continuous routine, and that's really going to be your starting block, is allowing people to stay, and then we can work on all those other issues.
Last speaker.
My name is Scott Stipp. The reason, good evening everybody. My name is Wanda Parrott. I write a column called Homeless in Paradise, and I'm not here to speak about it tonight. I'm here to represent the voice, collectively or individually, of the people who are not here tonight, the homeless themselves. This is a lady named Celia Sue Eck, who's a professional journalist, just like me, except I'm not homeless. She is. She's 69. She just had breast cancer surgery yesterday. And I'm going to read a poem that she wrote. I'm going to read it twice. First, so you hear it. The second time, to let it sink in. And I would like to invite you to please close your eyes and imagine Celia Sue speaking. The title of the poem is Someday Home. I don't really care. I'm not holding my breath about what they're going to do someday. Someday is homeless women's time. Between Sunday and Monday, when we're trapped in ice, what they're going to do about homelessness someday doesn't help us now. I have been this way for more than 4 long years. Will I freeze to death and die without dignity in my car before they do something? Now I'll repeat it. Someday Home by Celia Sue Eck. I don't really care. I'm not holding my breath about what they're going to do someday. Someday is homeless women's time. Between Sunday and Monday, when we are trapped on ice. What they're going to do about homelessness someday doesn't help us now. I have been this way for more than 4 long years now. Will I freeze to death and die without dignity in my car before they do something? Thank you, everybody, for doing something.
Is there any more public comment? Seeing comments closed. That was can everybody hear me? It sounds like I'm coming in and out, maybe the battery or something. So, a lot of good comments, passionate comments, and I thought a couple, for me, a couple speakers clarified a lot of things about, we want to make sure we're not brushing people with a broad brush about their apprehensions about putting a shelter or anything on that corner as though they don't like homeless people. We just need to throw that out there and make sure we're all clear about everybody's entitled to their opinion. That doesn't mean they're not compassionate people, and people that support necessarily homeless shelter on that parcel It's not like they don't care about the community and what the effect that that shelter may have on the community. So I want to lay that down. And then I'll ask the city attorney, did he hear anything that he was able to answer?
No, not really. The only question that came up, I think, was from one speaker dealing with whether or not it required an environmental impact report. The answer is I've heard nothing that necessarily would require that. So that's, the zoning is already taking place in that.
I think the battery's going out on mine. You know, for someone that asked, when was this rezoned? It was rezoned last year sometime before this current council was on there, before I was on the council, it was rezoned. Part of that requirement was that the state passed a law that says you have to have a zone in your city that was available for emergency shelters by right. Every city has that, so every city is in the same situation we are, that they have a zone in their community that if a nonprofit or anyone else wanted to open up a shelter, all they had to do was go down to City Hall and pull out the permit. It could not be denied. So it's nothing particularly special about Seaside.
Let me follow up with that if I can.
If I could just follow up on that. When we did rezone it, please understand that when we do a zoning change, it requires a first reading of an ordinance and a second reading of the ordinance. And both of those ordinances took place in public meetings, and there was public notice regarding the ordinance in those meetings. So the public actually did have an opportunity to comment on the rezone, even though the state mandated it. The city did take action in public meetings approximately a year ago.
Mr. City Manager, did you have anything that came up that you want to clarify?
Not at this hour, no.
It's already late, so we want to finish this. I know we had another agendized item, but we'll just handle that when we get to that item. But I thought I heard a couple of things I just want to be clear. Someone talked about the McDonald's site, the old McDonald's site. That's not the city site. McDonald's will we hope that McDonald's, the franchisee will build a new building. So I just want to be clear about that. Someone talked about to continue the discussion. We will continue the discussion on all of these things. April 1st is the first round of funding. So it is possible that you could miss the first round of funding and it's a second round. Someone had that question or comment. Okay, so bringing it back to the council, what are your thoughts? Let's try to be succinct and just get down to the last thing I would say. Someone talked about action. We're not taking any action. If we choose to, we'll give some direction to staff, but we're not taking any action. All right, starting with Council Member Kisperski.
Yes, thank you. Okay. It sounds to me like there was some kind of free walk on Friday that would make it so that any new proposals would have to go in the second round of funding. I think.
If I understand correctly, there's a mandatory conference on February 28th that applicants will be required to attend on submitting an application for funding.
Let's go down. I want to be a little, like I said, a little bit more succinct. Let's go down the list. Do something, don't do something, with partners or alone. And then if you want, you can talk about your support for some type of activity at that location or somewhere else. And then go to your support for doing other things in those categories I talked about. So Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I can.
Okay.
Absolutely do something. Sounds like everybody is supportive of us doing this with partners, so as well. Shelter and non-sheltered. I want as many projects as we can do. I want us to have an application for the HEAP funding, so the only way we can do that is by following the proposal that people have brought up to us. Then I think I would like to seize the moment, as somebody said, and take advantage of that opportunity while we have it. But also, beyond HEAP funding, we just got a whole bunch of great ideas here today that we should pursue. In particular, I like the idea of allowing ADUs in our city, or at least encouraging them somehow, so that adds more housing units to our stock. Tiny homes is a great idea. People have been talking about all kinds of services that we should offer. So that's future discussions, I guess, is what I'm saying. I want to focus beyond HEAP. And if we're going to focus on a subgroup, it sounds like I heard nobody disagreeing with the idea that we should do women and children. So that sounds like a universally supported idea. And as to whether we should accept the county offer, I think that I would like to accept the county's offer primarily because we have been given the option to do something about the many unsheltered people that we have in our city. And if I was to say, I want this, but I want it elsewhere, I think what this would do is cause a roadblock and end up with no project. And I don't want to go down that direction. I would rather do something. So, yes, I want to support the county's project. And absolutely for the future ideas and homelessness ideas, we should absolutely involve the homeless committee. And as to whether I prefer one project over another, I think I'm undecided. I'm not sure.
Keep turning my mic off. The thing is, stay focused, do something, partner, and then the shelter on that. Shelter. The shelter on that area or somewhere else. I think we can do some of those other programs, but we won't be able to figure that out by the 28th. But it's money left over. And before I give it back to Councilman Wizard, the $12 million went to Monterey and San Benito County. Monterey County received $10 million. And as these things come up to me and I remember them, I will try to answer the people's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were so many wonderful and helpful and useful comments that we received from the public, and I feel as though if I don't acknowledge some of them, then I would be doing a disservice to the people that have committed to staying here until 11 o'clock at night discussing this issue. So I'll be brief while trying to acknowledge what you've all shared with us. But specifically, I want to say that my partner and I participated in the point-in-time count the other day, and we walked and drove the entire city of Delray Oaks, and we saw exactly 0 people in Delray Oaks. So while I appreciate that homelessness is rising, the amount of people who are homeless is increasing. Whether there are 30 beds or 40 beds or 50 beds or 5 beds at a potential shelter in Seaside, there are more than that many people who are identified as homeless in Seaside. So to say that we shouldn't do this project because it's not big enough doesn't make sense to me, because we should do something instead of nothing, which is what everybody is saying. So I very much support a project. I also think that it's important that we identify and be loud and outspoken about our support for projects, because if we wait until somebody else does a project, if we are on the back end, then they get to dictate to us what a successful project looks like. If we come out of the gate and say, this is what we want in our community, this is how it should be done, we get to say what the rubric is. We get to tell people, we are doing the best project, you should meet our standards. So if we're going to be Seaside first, it has to be us first, so that we can tell others, no, you need to follow us. We're not going to follow you. I think that one of the things I'm hearing from our community is there isn't, and you're absolutely correct, there is not a well-designed plan, because you're watching the plan take form right now. This is an open conversation, and so we don't have a packaged product with a bow on it to show you, because we're at the same phase you are, which is gathering information and exploring the realm of possibility. To that end, I would say that one way for our public to be more engaged and have access and opportunity to making sure that this fits with the community is to have the homeless committee receive monthly or otherwise regular reports from whatever provider or operator of whatever service, whether that's a shelter or case management or anywhere in between. Our homeless committee meets once a month, and I don't think it would be overly burdensome for them to hear a 3 or 5 minute presentation every month about what's going on, just sort of a check-in. I mean, we have our community's Blue Ribbon Task Force for the Prevention of Youth Violence, and we have the various nonprofits and public agencies who give a climate report every month, talking about what they're doing, how many people they're serving, children diverted from the school to prison pipeline and instead given opportunities to take a different route. Why is it different that we can't have these providers give us a climate report of what's happening, and so that we can have faith, we can believe that the program is meeting our standards in our community? And if it's not, we see it in real time and we can address it then, as opposed to hearing it once a year or never. So to go down the list, yes, let's do something. And I think that one of the things that's gotten lost in the conversation is that this building that's being offered by the county is owned by the county and it sits on county land. So whether we want a shelter there or not is not up to us. It's up to an applicant and the county to lease the building to that applicant and the leadership council to approve their grant. So if we don't want it, certainly the county can say, well, we're not going to override that community, but they could say, well, we hear you, but we think there's a greater need. So it's up to us to set the conditions of which we would accept this and not say, no, we don't want a part in it, because if we check out, it might happen anyway. So let's talk about what we're willing to accept and give the county some framework, give the leadership council some framework so that they can say, well, this is going to satisfy the need of that community to be a partner and not a dictator of terms. So I support a shelter, but if we're going to have a shelter, who are we serving? What does that look like? I never heard anybody say anything negative about our neighbors who are currently experiencing homelessness. There was concern about activity that can jeopardize the safety of our community. So people who are under the influence of mind-altering substances, sometimes they do things that they wouldn't do if they were sober. So that's totally reasonable and rational. So while I totally understand that, and in my experience in law enforcement, I absolutely know what somebody who is under the influence is capable of, and then immediately regrets the moment they're no longer under the influence. One of the things that hasn't been discussed yet in this conversation is that this grant from Senate Bill 850, that check was cashed by our Leadership Council a couple of weeks ago. There are conditions written into that state law that we cannot override as a city, that the county can't override, that the Leadership Council is beholden to complying with. And one of those things is housing first. So we can't say you can only take sober people, because it's up to the state law that dictates housing first. And if housing first says you have to take everybody, then that's who they have to take. They can't say, no, not you, oh, no, not you. So we need to have a conversation talking about what conditions we can apply, which conditions are appropriate, and what we expect from the conditions that we're able to use or that we can't use. So I support us using a partner to administer this program because the best way to screw this up is for us to think that we can do it on our own and not seek input from others. We have no expertise, we have no institutional capacity. This is not our bread and butter. We should not be in charge of this. If we're going to do this, we need to have somebody who knows what they're doing and has been doing this for a good long while. We have 2 partners that have said that they want to do this. I'm not in a position to pick either one, but neither is our council because we don't administer the funding. The Leadership Council administers the funding. So we can say that we want one or the other more, but ultimately we don't write the check. It's not up to us who gets picked. So we need to talk about what we expect so that when the Leadership Council makes that decision, they are informed about what fits in our community because we are the ones that represent all of you. And if we can demonstrate to them what's important, hopefully they're listening to us. As far as funding goes, again, that goes back to the Leadership Council and the breadth of Senate Bill 850. It's not the city's dime. The city can choose to partner or support, but we already do with the Joint Powers Authority with the Community Homeless Services, our coalition of homeless services providers. So we're already paying into a fund to support offering services and programs to our brothers and sisters who are homeless. So if we want to augment that or increase it, okay. If you don't, that's fine too, because we're already making a financial contribution. I think that's the majority of my thoughts for now. Thank you.
Just to be clear, if we're, again, do something, not do something, partner, not, so you can weigh in on who you think the best partner is, because, if, you know, we can weigh in on who we think the best partner would be on that line. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to everybody who participated tonight. I just need to acknowledge, first off, why we're here, and I think that's not simply because of the homeless issue, but it's because of the HEAP grant. The E in the HEAP is emergency. We've got an emergency going on right now. There's an urgency to this, so when people want to know why we're rushing it through, it was built into this grant, and it's acknowledging that there's some urgency. At the town hall, I heard some people say that it was a done deal, and then tonight I hear people say, "Why don't you have a plan?" It's kind of coming and going, I guess. So I just want to say, we're dealing with a lot of things here. We can look at this, the problem. I think we all recognize the problem. If we can't evict someone from a park, if we can't offer them a place to stay, something to think about. We talk about funding. Many studies show that providing shelter for homeless people actually saves municipalities money because of the calls and basically for public service calls. I think it's really important that we move on this and move on this now. The public, the rest of the council, people have many great ideas on how we can deal with this, and I think we should pursue them all. I think that's really important. Let's go for it. We need more homeless shelters, not fewer. We need more services for the homeless. I think it's self-evident, not just the point in time study doesn't say that. I see it on my street all the time. I know we need these.
Any particular clientele in the homeless shelter, it's different people that can go in the homeless shelter, and that's one of the controversies. So we got to get staff direction, so that will help them get directions.
Hey, okay, I'll go through this now.
Yeah, don't go through the list. Just tell. So is there a subgroup?
Do something, absolutely.
Is there a
With partners.
is there a subgroup that you would like to see in it? What the-
Absolutely.
Women or children or grown men or just children by themselves?
Yes, yes.
That's
With partners, absolutely, with partners. Do we need a shelter? Yes, we need more shelters. Do we focus on HEAP? I think it'd be a problem if we don't focus on HEAP because it's funding that we need and people are prepared to apply for it. And all these other ideas are really good. I'm just afraid they are not going to be able to get the HEAP funding. On the subgroup, we have the women and children. Absolutely, I kind of like the allusion to the lifeboats. I think that's very important that women and children, especially children, can help because that's going to help us in the long term. But we want to expand it as we can. The funding source, we're going to have to deal with it, but it's going to, again, providing as much funding, putting as much funding as we can save us money in the long run. Homeless Committee should review anything they have time to review and actually come up with ideas for us. And the CHS, there's 2 CHSs, which makes it very difficult.
Okay, I think we...
Gathering for women and the idea that they provide daytime services, the Gathering for Women, and if we can provide nighttime shelter, that would be a great idea. So anyway, overall, I think I answered most of the questions, but the direction is that we move forward with CHS and the HEAP funding and the shelter in Seaside.
Before I forget, what we're going to do, if we do anything and if we have requirements, we're going to send down stuff to the housing committee. So just don't worry about them. We're going to send them work. So we got to concentrate on what we need to do by the 28th if you guys want to do something. So I want staff to have clear direction if that's what you want them to have.
Through the mayor, so you can, just want to, this is going to be a little lengthy because we spent a lot of time, and I spent a lot of time, and we all spend a lot of time.
Can you speak into the mic for loud?
You can't get much closer to the speaker. Thank you. We've all spent a lot of time planning this. You know, we had the meeting on the 13th, about 160 people. I've had numerous Facebook discussions that were rather heated. Every morning in Nifty 50s, we have huge meetings. Everywhere we go, this is a major topic. You know, some things were said earlier that brought up, that were said that everybody was in favor of this concept. And I think everybody had different ideas how the numbers broke out and how they interpreted it, and I kind of did my own analysis. But what I heard was 9 people in Seaside were against it, 4 were for it, and 8 were in the neutral area. Non-residents, 8 people were for it, 2 were in the neutral zone. And then as far as they didn't really have a yes or no answer. And then we heard the Monterey County residents say that they believe they would listen to the Seaside people, Seaside City Council as it related to their perspectives. And it sounds like 3 people here have decided, and that's great, but I'm going to go in a different direction for a variety of reasons. And based on my information that I've gathered, this is the reason why, and also based on my experience of living here 65 years, and hearing different residents say I'm going in a different direction. The meetings had significant impact to me. I changed my philosophy based on what I've learned in a month process of planning, a month of organizing, and a month process of listening to people. I've heard residents say they were fearful that it would turn into the pit. Though I believe these fears are unwarranted, I do believe those that believe that, I can understand that. The decades of city leaders, churches, police officers, and community leaders trying to make this city safer for their children, I appreciate, to remove blight, to increase the pride of this community. plus fight for economic opportunity is obvious. The concern that it took over 20 years and over $7 million to develop a downtown, that we can begin to believe in it, and it's almost real. There are stores going into that downtown area. And there's concern that the new area of development would bring negative impact. I not necessarily agree with that, but I can appreciate that concept, and I think we can learn from that. I've heard residents say that they do not want to be taken advantage of by outside groups. I am personally aware of seeing that happen, and I understand that concern. I've seen it happen in development, I've seen it happen in community events, I've seen it in social issues where residents have felt they've been taken advantage of by other organizations, by other cities. I do not believe this is one of those things. I do believe there's some solid groups that make good recommendations for some good people. I'm not throwing fingers at Census, but I do know and I do understand that there's that feeling as those residents have been here for a while that we've been used and taken advantage of. And that has to be understood. I do believe that we cannot close our eyes and we must play a role in a solution. Because homelessness is a serious problem, and Seaside has big hearts. If nothing else, we are good people with big hearts, and we do care about homeless. I cannot support the idea of us managing this program. We do not have the tools, the ability, the time, or the money. I cannot support, personally, partnership with another agency if they are outside agencies, though I believe they have good partners with Seaside in numerous events. But more importantly, the most important thing, in all my life I've planned, I've organized, I've seen things, how things come together. And often there's community buy-in. I did not see this there. And I understand the time constraint. But I did not see any planning, organization, or thought process. I did not see community buy-in. I did not see community conversation. And this is going to be in our neighborhood, no other neighborhood. The letters of interest are February 11th and February 18th. I did not see complete plans. I did not see drawings. I didn't understand anything. And I don't think countless residents know this discussion, yet alone know the plans and the discussion where it's going to impact them positively or negatively. Our city council, over the past 5 years, in this city, has seen more discussion on developing a two-story house, more discussion on cutting down a tree in our neighborhood than we have spent on this project, on this proposal. That has been concerned because I believe in proper planning. I'm aware that Salinas has a thorough plan for homeless shelters, and the Veterans Transit has a complete plan for drawings. And I heard tonight they're not going to support that. And their plan is significant. Their plan is good. They have drawings. They have beds. They have an organization. They have plan A and they have plan B, but we're here tonight. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. That's unfortunate. Being prepared, having a thorough plan and community investment into potential project of this magnitude, potential is vital. Last minute or 2-week-old letters that do not reflect a plan or a significant preparation, it should be required. I understand that deadline came quick. I understand that there should have been greater communication. But I don't understand where we're going with this. And I understand that there's good people that want to come to Seaside and do something for us. We need to have a handle on what's going to happen, because I don't think in reality any of us that on a daily basis know, and we should know, that it impacts our lives, positively or negatively. I believe we should do our homework. I don't think we did, because we didn't have the time. I'm hoping more money will be allocated for homeless facilities down the road. We should immediately find locations, options, research options, and what we can provide, how much it would cost, create plans, create options, have community meetings. This is too important not to have community buy-in. We're going to have a plan that should be viable. We should understand what it is. The residents need to be partners. I do believe there are opportunities to have immediate impact for homeless. And I'm not going to discuss them, but there are a lot of really good ideas, and I think that will be discussed later on. I might bring in some of those ideas as well. Obviously, if the city council wants to go in this direction, obviously the funding has to come from the state, because we have too many costs related to the city. We have PERS that's going to come a big chunk of money out of the city. We have road repairs. We talked to her about road repairs. We have other things, so we can't do it alone. We can contribute, or we can do it. Moving the facility, I think it's a great idea, but we don't know where we decide to move it to. Are we going to have negative resident comments? We don't know the cost of it. We have a timeline. Great idea, not doable, I don't think. With this time frame, I think it's going to be literally almost extremely challenging to have anybody involved with anything, to include the committee. Long term, I think there should be task force. I think there should be a subcommittee. I think there should be council and homeless committee coordinated efforts. This one's extremely challenging. Self-parking, safe parking, maybe we should consider that. Housing vouchers, maybe we can consider that. Or it appears to be we're leading in this direction, and that's fine. Tiny homes, I think that's a good concept. The deadline for this, doors need to be open in 2 years with this fund. So whenever they start June 1 of 2019, doors got to be open in 2021. And if you don't, then there's issues about returning funds. That's serious stuff. For us to build new buildings in 2 years, that would be wonderful. I'm not sure I've seen that happen in this city or any other city. So it's it's a long-term plan. I've already stated that I don't think this is a well thought out plan. Good people, good organizations, plans I don't think is well thought out. If we go in this direction, and my hand was forced to make a decision without any consideration, without any thought process, without any communication, without any total awareness of these groups, which is truly unfair to any of us to make that kind of decision. It is not fair. I totally believe to make a decision without information is totally not reasonable. I would lean towards a program that would impact women and children. That's what I would personally lean towards. If hand was forced. I think that's, I think just the last thing. I think the mayor's idea, if we could, which doesn't seem we're going to, we can try to ask for funds for other services that you mentioned, beyond the ones that I mentioned, possible, but I think there's what I see a direction that I heard 3 people are saying, then we just disagree. And whatever we decide to do, it right or wrong, if we decide to go in that way, we are one team, we are one body, and we'll all support that. But I do have concerns. And I do have, it's unfortunate we did not listen to the community as much as we should have. It's unfortunate the groups didn't have enough time to present something we all can get behind and understand. I just don't feel comfortable saying there's not enough information out there. Not against the homeless, against the preparation and the planning. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Thank the City Council for those comments. I want to say, before I say my comments, we're going to continue the short-term rental
agenda item to another meeting. And I just want to apologize to those that stayed back. I should have called that about 9:30. But I thought maybe we'd be fair, but I apologize. And we'll make sure we don't make that type of mistake again. I wanted to ask, if it's okay, I want to ask one of the service providers for clarification, because I only gave them 3 minutes during public comment. So just a quick question is to the CHS and Gathering for Women. Are you guys considering that an emergency shelter or a transitional type thing?
It would be a resource center that's similar to what we offer at Gathering for Women during the day with overnight accommodations. The accommodations would not qualify for transitional accommodations, but they could be as much as 90 days of accommodations for a potential guest.
So it wouldn't necessarily fall under the emergency shelter?
It would still qualify under emergency
Well,
shelter.
but that's not what you guys are calling it. I mean, which category would you come underneath?
All of these proposals would be emergency shelters. Robin is not here any longer, and so she's the partner that operates these types of shelters in Monterey County currently. So I'm sorry, I can't answer the specifics.
No, you did a great job.
Thank you, Mayor.
No, that's okay. Okay, my comments were just going to go to exactly what people are talking about supporting the women and children, so I wanted to have background information about exactly what was that type of program. For me, earlier, well, let's establish something. This money came down from the state, and the people that are tasked with divvying out the grants piece by piece, they issued a notice of funding availability, was released on February 8th, 2019. That's when this thing came out. So it's not as though the council was sitting on any information and we were not trying to gather as much information as we could. So I don't want the community to think that we had all this information and we're just springing it on them at last minute. When we received that February 8th communique, it went out, that's when everybody else, attendance went up and they started thinking about how they can apply for those funds. And when the county sent them their letter to the city saying that they had the modulars, they would allow the modulars to be used for a shelter, well, it was incumbent on the city to respond back and say, well, as a placeholder, it may be possible for us to use those modulars. But that letter did not tie us down to do anything. All it said was, we're open to hear ideas. And I said at the time that I'm open to a shelter, but I'm not sure if that's the best place for that shelter. And then we went on to say that the best thing to do, because it said in the letter, was to go out and get information from the public. And 2 weeks later, we held a meeting. Councilman Wizard and Mayor Pro Tem Pacheco held a meeting to gather public information. So when we're talking about this plan, it was a short time frame for us to reacting as fast and as deliberate as we can and professionally as we can. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to force this anywhere. And so when we talk about a plan, this is part of the plan. Is to talk to the community first and hear what the community has to say. Hearing what, I listened to a lot of community members, and what they said was that they were not afraid, and it's too bad that somehow they had to use that terminology, but they were not afraid or they're not against the homeless. No, of course they're not against the homeless and they're not afraid of the homeless. But we all have a thought about where that type of help, that support should be. And I have my thoughts. But when I'm listening to the council, it seems like they have directions about doing something. My main thing was, again, it's not chasing dollars, but the grant money is there, and the grant money has to be pushed out.
So either Seaside is going to get some of that grant money, or it's all going to flow to other cities that apply for it. Some cities are not going to apply for it. I don't think, I don't call out names, but maybe more affluent communities are not going to apply for it. But if Salinas applies for, if it's $1 million in that pot for rental assistance, and no one's applied for it, and some organization in Seaside, some organization in Salinas applies for it, well, then they have to push out that $1 million. Or it goes back to the state. And so my thing is, I think we can chew gum and walk at the same time. And I know we have to meet the 28th deadline for that initial shelter, but the other things we can try to get through by April also. And I'm not saying just because it's $1 million in that pot that we need to go for $1 million, but $300,000 to supplement what the churches are doing, or what other nonprofits are doing, or the Salvation Army is doing. That's money that they have to spend. That money is not going to go back to the county. It's not going to go back anywhere else. If it's not spent by 1st of January 2021, then they're going to send that money back. So I think staff has good directions about, do you have, Ms. City Manager, you got good directions about moving forward?
Yes.
That's what I like to hear. Clear, concise. Let me just get this, just a moment. So here's some of the rules. Let me back up a little bit. When I said I read the minutes earlier, I wasn't clear. Someone thought I just read the minutes of the meeting for Councilman Wizard and Pacheco. I read all the minutes on this issue going back a year. 3 or 4 meetings from Leadership Council. I read the minutes taken from each meeting that happened on the peninsula. I got the minutes from the senior talk. I got the minutes from the summary notes of 11/7/18 from District 5 dialogue with Supervisor Adams. I read the minutes from the HEAP minutes that they had meeting at Oldemeyer November 8, 2018. That's the one where the majority of people said they want to help youth. I read the minutes from Monterey and San Benito HEAP prioritization PowerPoint. I read the minutes from the special HEAP meeting for seniors. Read the meetings from the Homeless Emergency Assistance Program Youth Action Board. And the youth had some good things that they wanted to make sure we weigh in on. And that's my point about those other pots of money need to be looked at, and we need to go forward and not just concentrate on this shelter. We have to be able to do more for our citizens. So, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you. Since the other members of the council made a specific, specific recommendation, I'll also say that I support the Gathering Community Human Services proposal. And I would ask that you call for a special meeting on the 27th, which is Wednesday, so that the city of Seaside can identify which programs we want to pursue for funding, which services we want to pursue as the city of Seaside for the rental assistance and the youth violence and the diversion. And we allow, we direct our staff to submit a letter of support for Gathering and Community Human Services.
Councilmember Kaspersky, did you hear anything you disagree with from Councilman Wizard? Say it loud. Please.
No.
Councilman Campbell, did you hear anything that you would, we'll call for a special meeting, and I heard a letter of support for Gathering Women and look at the other potential opportunities for grant funding.
So, and no is affirmative. No is I agree with what he said. So, just checking. No, I have nothing, no problem with what Councilmember Wizard just suggested.
Tem?
I believe, and just to be contrary, I guess, that both groups should come back and give us a bit of detailed information and then make a decision. We heard 3 or 4 minutes between each group. I think if we had more information, we can make a better decision. To pinpoint someone tonight after 2-3 minute conversation is kind of challenging. There was no opportunity to ask questions, and that is not the fault of the mayor or the city. There was just no time to ask questions. There was no time to think about it other than 30 seconds after all everybody spoke. So it would be nice, I think, personally, being disagreeable, I guess, for both groups to come back, share their thoughts, be able to ask the questions, and then make a common sense, hopeful recommendation rather than out of their head, momentary thought.
We'll ask them both to come back on the 27th. City Manager, do you have clear understanding for directions?
A little clearer before that aspect, but if, as I understand it, both of those groups would attend the meeting on the 28th and more fully form their proposal, and would have the opportunity to more fully form their proposal, and the city could select a more fully formed proposal anytime in March. And the city could convene the city could attend, and we could attend with others the meeting on the 28th, because that meeting is more an identification of who might apply.
You lost me.
Just a moment, sir. Sir, there's no public comment. Thank you.
So for staff, well, right, for staff, the question is, does the council want to have a meeting on the 27th and choose on the 27th between the two competing proposals, and have staff prepare ideas beyond the shelter that either that some partner would apply for on the 27th. That's not a lot of time, seeing as though it's 11:30.
That is true. That's why I wanted to focus on the shelter. But I agree with, we do have time to see if we have partners for the other areas of grant opportunities. So what we'll do is we'll call for a special meeting on the 27th to firm up these thoughts that we have tonight. The organizations that want to go to the, what is it, what's it called? The mandatory grant meeting, so they can know the criteria. They need to attend that, and then we'll go from there. We'll go from there. Like I said, we can't have a perfect plan because we're going as we can, and we're not giving action tonight. All we can do is give direction, so we can't say we have it all planned out because we don't. Other than to meet as soon as we can on the 27th and firm up that you guys want to do what the direction you're giving this city staff tonight, which is move forward on the possibility that it may be a shelter 1292 on Broadway. I heard someone say concentrate on women and children. My point is, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem about, the plans are not out there, they're not necessarily clear, but I believe the three of you guys know already who you don't want in there and who you do want. And I thought you guys said that about women and children, am I right? And that's why I don't want to keep going over the same ground. So, but if the Mayor Pro Tem wants them to make two proposals, then that's fine. But let's just go ahead and close this meeting now. Maybe Craig, he'll say something about it.
Again, just for the sake of preparing a meeting and an agenda that meets the council's satisfaction, I would imagine that the 27th would be a presentation by both of these groups. And that at best, we get the information on the 26th. I mean, at best. Because normally we post agendas and packets days in advance, but there is no time to do that. It's a special meeting, and we know they won't have all of their information formulated, but, you know, let's just be clear. We have a consensus of the council that wants to move forward, and they said they tend to lean towards women and children. So that should be enough to get a meeting together. Council Member Kaspersky.
I'm going to make one contrary argument, which is that I think I would prefer picking one tonight and then having the special meeting to no action tonight. Okay, then maybe we can't do that. Never mind.
No, that's fine. That's the dilemma we're in right now. So. It will be agendized to take action that night, and that doesn't mean we have to do anything, but it will be agendized to take action. All right, I think that's enough. We will move the agenda along. All right. That was it. I won't entertain, continue to be past 10:30, and I won't allow mayor or council members comments, and so I will accept the judgment. Meeting is adjourned.